Excellent. We shall call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Roll call.
Commissioner Shu? Oh. Can you speak a little bit louder into the microphone? Make sure it's on.
Green button.
There you
Yeah, I'm here.
go. Commissioner Gopal?
I'm here.
Chair Tambe?
Here.
Commissioner sorry.
Davis.
Davis, sorry.
Here.
And Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. We'll go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes for the March 7th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes of March 7th, 2019.
Looking for a second.
I second it.
Excellent. Are there any changes and or amendments? No, we can move to a vote. Excellent. The motion to approve the minutes of March 7th passes. As we have no ceremonial matters or presentations or postponements, we can move to oral communications that are not related to the agenda item. So for those who are present, there is a blue card that looks like this up on the front right-hand side. This is the card if you want to speak to the commission about anything that you would like to related to Parks and Recreations that is not on the agenda item right now. If there's something you'd like to speak about that's coming up on the agenda, please fill one of these out and hand it to Kevin, and we will get an opportunity to hear from you. Excellent. See, we have one. We have one oral communication. Sophia.
You guys can hear me like this, right? Okay.
Excellent.
So hi, my name is Sophia Badillo, and I'm actually a resident of Rancho Recanata. I'm also recently was elected to be a board member. The Rancho Recanata Special District is 0.4 square miles, and it collects 4.61% of the Rancho property owner's property tax. They have a pool there that's open all year round, and currently the hours are Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. And then on in the afternoon from 3:30 to 7:30 p.m. for swim team practice and lessons. Currently, there are only 5 programs: swim lessons, swim team, lap swim, swim camp, and open swim. The pool is not being utilized between 9 a.m. and 3 o'clock, and I think this would actually be a good time for Cupertino to maybe have some programs in their rec programs. The pool is 6 lanes, and I think that now we only have 5 programs, but I really think that Parks and Recs can take advantage of the fact that the pool is open all year round, unlike Blackberry Farm, and help it have it serve the community, not only in Rancho, but also everyone else in Cupertino. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Seeing as we have no other oral communications, we will go ahead and move on to business. For this meeting, we are going to be moving some of the agenda items around due to time constraints.
Chair Tomei, sorry, really quick. There was written communications that was emailed to
everybody.
everybody.
Yes, sorry. There was a written communication. It is included in the packet. We read it.
Was that today? It must have been today. Oh, I do.
It was in the packet. Excellent. We're going to go ahead and move a new business item number 5 and 6 to the front. So we're going to go ahead and start off with new business item number 5, which is receive a Brown Act presentation by the city attorney.
Okay, good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm Heather Minner, your city attorney, tonight I'm going to give just a very brief presentation on the Brown Act, which is the state's primary open meeting laws. So I'm just going to dive in here. So a little bit of the history of the Brown Act. In the 1950s, there was a series of investigative journalism that was done by the San Francisco Chronicle, and there was a whole 10-part series that was called Your Secret Government. And it really exposed that there was a lot of secret meetings going on throughout local government, throughout the state, and there was a big push after that series for open meeting laws to bring government decisions out from behind the shadows, out in the closed room. So the reporter that worked on that series worked with the League of California Cities to draft the Brown Act, and it was carried by Assembly member Ralph Brown and signed by Governor Earl Warren in the 1950s. And so that is our sort of bedrock open meeting law that we have in California. And on the screen here is excerpts from the intent of the law, and that's just a few of them, but you see that the gist is that the power of government really resides in the people. It came from the people, and the people didn't give everything over to the people, to the local governments that are governing over them. They held back the right to know what's going on, and they reserved the right to access the documents and the communications and the decisions that their representatives are making. And there's also a real thrust behind the Brown Act that it's not up to local officials to decide what the public should know and not know, that's really a decision for the public, and that everything should be public, and there's only a few exceptions in the Brown Act. And people need to know what's going on in order to be able to hold their governments accountable. So this on the screen is really the heart of the Brown Act, and everything within the Brown Act flows from this. It says that all meetings of the legislative body shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meetings except as otherwise provided. And again, those exceptions are very narrow. So this presentation, I'm going to unpack this a little bit. We'll talk about, well, what is a meeting, and what does it mean to be open to the public? And the Brown Act, although this talks about legislative bodies, it applies to commissions as well. It applies to the Park and Recs commissions, to other commissions within the city, basically any standing bodies that are advising the city council and created by the city council. So the first part of that was, well, what is a meeting that's subject to the Brown Act? And here's the definition on the screen. It's a gathering a majority of the members to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action within an item within their jurisdiction. So this includes regularly scheduled meetings like the one we're at tonight. It includes special meetings, and it also includes meetings of the body, even if it's just to receive information or discuss policy questions. So retreats and study sessions, those are also subject to the Brown Act. But meetings can also happen in other places. So I've got a picture of people meeting in a bar there that, you know, anytime 3 commissioners get together and are discussing a topic that's within the jurisdiction of your commission, in this case would be about Parks and Recs in the city of Cupertino, that is a meeting that is subject to the Brown Act. And the problem with the bar example is that is not an open and noticed meeting. And so you have to be careful to think about when meetings are occurring and try not to have those occur when it's outside of this open forum. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about impermissible meetings that haven't been noticed to the public and ways that this can happen. So one is what's called serial meetings, and that isn't about your breakfast cereal. It's about a series of communications that cause a meeting to have occurred. So meetings under the Brown Act can actually happen even when you don't have a majority of the commissioners together. So a majority is 3 commissioners. That's what it takes to have a quorum. But even when you don't have 3 commissioners together in one place, you could still have an impermissible meeting if there's been a series of communications that lead to a discussion, and the problem there is that it hasn't been open and noticed. So what exactly are we talking about here? There's a couple different ways this can happen. One is what's called the daisy chain, where Commissioner A will go to Commissioner B and say, hey, you know, what do you think about this issue, this topic? And they reach a decision that, well, we think this is what we should do, or this is a concern for the city. And then Commissioner B goes to Commissioner C and says, hey, A and B and I were thinking this. What do you think? Can you get on board about that? You know, what are your thoughts about that issue? And that's a problem because now you've had 3 commissioners sharing their thoughts. It's just through another commissioner. The other way that serial meetings can happen is kind of the hub and spoke model. So you'll have one commissioner going to more than one other commissioner. So they'll ask, Commissioner A will ask Commissioner B, you know, what are we going to do about this decision? And then they'll go to Commissioner C, what are we going to do about this decision? And then now you've had 3 commissioners reaching a consensus outside of the meeting. And that can happen with staff, too. If you have staff serving as a go-between or a member of the public serving as a go-between that is building a consensus between the commissioners. Now, you have a right to meet with your constituents and with members of the public, and they have a right to contact you, and that can happen outside of a meeting. But the thing to be careful about is not to have those meetings convey what the other commissioners have decided on this issue. So it's just think of it as always just a one-on-one conversation. And this is something that both you as commissioners, but also the public should be aware of, is that, you know, we shouldn't use those one-on-one meetings to try to build a consensus amongst a majority of the commissioners when it's outside of the public meeting. And so it's always nice to say, like, I'm welcome to have these discussions with you, and I share your concerns, or that's really nice to know. But if people start saying, well, this other commissioner would agree to this if we did this, then you could say, well, you know, I don't want to start having deliberations among the commissioners outside of the open meeting, and so I won't be asking you about their opinion. But fine to meet with people outside of the meetings if it's just these one-on-one conversations. And so along those lines, what are meetings that aren't subject to the Brown Act? And so again, contacts with individuals, you are free to talk to advocates, consultants, staff people, one other commissioner. Sometimes I like to talk about the buddy system. You know, like you want to talk about something on the agenda and you just want to think it through with somebody. You can do that with one other commissioner. The 2 of you can get together and talk it through. But that's as far as it goes, and then the rest of the discussion has to happen in the open and public meeting. And you can talk with members of other committees. And a majority of the commission can also gather at certain places, provided you don't talk about specific issues within your jurisdiction. And so you can all go to a conference about parks together, and you can go to community meetings held by activists or neighborhood groups and social clubs. You can go to meetings of the city council or other commissions. But the key is that if you have three of you together, shouldn't be talking about parks issues specific to Cupertino at those meetings. And so, and similarly, there's social or ceremonial meetings, going to football games, farewell parties. Fine, everybody can go. Just don't discuss Cupertino Parks issues together while you're there. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be an open and public meeting, and the the purpose behind these requirements is so that people, the public, knows what is going to be discussed when their local government meets, and so that they can be aware and come and participate if they wish. If they don't know what you're going to be talking about, then they're not going to be able to come and share their views. And so there's a requirement that an agenda with a brief description of each item be posted at least 72 hours in advance of a commission meeting. And so those agendas go out, you're used to seeing them. And the public can come to the meeting and discuss anything they want to within the Parks and Rec's jurisdiction, and that's our open forum that we're used to. But the key for you to keep in mind is the commission can only discuss items that are on the agenda. Because if you start talking about something else, nobody's been noticed about it, and maybe they would have wanted to come up and share their views and helped influence your decision, and now they don't have a chance to do that. The discussions between the commissioners should be limited to what's on the agenda. There are a few minor exceptions to that. You can, if someone's a public member of the public is speaking about another topic, you can ask for more information from them. You can request staff to report back on this issue that the public has raised in open forum. You can request that an item be placed on a future agenda that comes before you. And you can ask for brief clarifying statements from staff and from the public who's speaking. But the key is that that there shouldn't be a lot of discussion after that. So I kind of keep it to the one or two back and forth, and then after that, I think the discussion should end. But if it's something that the commission wants to consider, you could talk about putting it on a future agenda. And so you can obviously, talk about these items. The issue is that we just need to wait until we've had a chance to notify the public about it and on a future agenda. And so these are some more requirements for having an open and public meeting. The written materials should be made available to the public at the same time they're made available to the commissioners. The public is permitted to freely attend and observe. We can't be excluding people. The public's permitted to speak on items in the agenda. There can be, reasonable restrictions on times. I think commonly a 3-minute time is common. And there's reasonable limits for order that allows the meeting to continue without disruptions. And then we have to keep recorded minutes of the meeting. I think the thing to keep here to remember is that the public has a right to speak, and they have a right to do so even if they're being a little rude. And often we can urge people to be on topic and to be polite and to respect the other people's views, but there's not a right to kick them out if they're not actually disrupting the meeting, if they're not speaking beyond their 3 minutes, if they're not so loud that other members of the public can't hear what's going on. It has to be almost a physical disruption of the meeting, because people have very strong First Amendment rights to come and share their views with you. But we always like to encourage people to do so in a thoughtful manner. So here's a little bit about consequences for violations of the Brown Act. There can be civil suits that are brought by members of the public to invalidate an action that's been taken if it was, for instance, on something that wasn't on the agenda, or if there had been improper meetings outside of the open meeting. Those actions can also enjoin or stop future violations if there's something about to occur that's wrong, or if there's been a pattern of violations. And the city, those are suits against the city, and the city has to defend them with city attorney budget. And if there was actually a violation and the petitioners are successful, the city would also have to pay attorney's fees. So there are real financial consequences to the city. There are also individual commissioners can be liable for violations of the Brown Act. If there was an intended violation, those are considered to be a misdemeanor, so there can be convictions. But again, it requires an overt act and an intent to violate the Brown Act. So that's my brief overview of the Brown Act, and I'm happy to answer any questions and let you get on with your meeting too.
Thank you very much for taking the time to review the Brown Act with us. It's really important. We want to make sure that we are transparent for our constituents. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
Yep, I do have one. So thank you. That it's really informative, irrespective of it. We make some mistakes, so it's better to really be debriefed. That's great. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I think, and one of the things you talked about this is Brown Act is applicable to the bodies which are appointed by City Council, like commissions. But there are committees. Within our city we have, and even there are subcommittees formed in general from the council. Is that applicable to the committees as well, or just for the commissions?
Well, each one requires a sort of factual investigation about how it's created, what they do, so I can't give like a blanket answer for everything.
Okay.
So
okay.
Happy to look into that.
Yeah,
and
no.
actually we are sort of going through that with Cupertino right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the second question I have is you talked about social meetings. For example, public wanted to meet with one commissioner, assuming that if they wanted to meet with, for me, for example, and they want to share some of those, we can meet with them, and the only way to share those inputs is to send the report to the staff, and then what is the process? I'm trying to
Yeah.
just understand, because there should be a feedback mechanism without violating the Brown Act.
Well,
So-
it's okay for you to have those conversations, and often this comes up more. It's more of an issue when there's an actual, for instance, a land use decision or something that's being made. There's certain due process hearing rights that information must be made part of the meeting, but less so for like legislative decisions or advisory decisions. But still, it's a good idea to let people know that you've been having conversations, and you can just say, oh, I met with, some of the applicants, for instance, and talked about their project, and just get it out there. And I think your chair has a thought about this
Yeah,
too.
we do have a section at the end that's commission reports, and that's where you can report on any contact or communication you've had with
On
the
a
person that's
public
it.
one. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But it's often not technically required unless it's in a sort of formal hearing process.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. I think that's it from us, and I know if we
Great.
have any additional questions, we'll definitely send it to you.
Yes, please do. I should have said that to begin with, that that my office is here for you, and I'm always happy to answer the phone or answer emails, and so do reach out to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Excellent. So we are going to go ahead and move on to the next new business item, which is item number 6. Subject is receive a Cupertino shuttle survey results presentation by the Public Works Department. As a reminder to the public, if you would like to speak on an agenda item, there's a blue card in the front on the right-hand side. We would love nothing more than to hear from you. So please do fill it out. It's in the front on the right-hand side. After this agenda item, we'll continue in the order that was listed on the agenda. Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Corral. I'm with the Public Works Department, and I'm here to give you an update this evening on the status of the community shuttle. So I'll go ahead and start off. And before I get started, I'd like to note that this item is going to City Council on April 16th. All right, so this evening, presentation's about 12 minutes, and then I'll have a short 2-minute video that I would like to show everyone that helps sort of illustrate the system that's proposed. We'll be discussing a little bit about the background of the shuttle, a little summary of a survey that we conducted last summer, and then get into the pilot that we're proposing. So to start off, the The genesis of the concept of a shuttle in Cupertino really centered around congestion in the tri-school area, the Monte Vista, Kennedy, and Lincoln school area, which, as many of you know and the community knows, experiences high levels of congestion, mostly because there's 3 schools in a very small area, particularly on McClellan. So in 2007, as a way of attempting to address that, the Public Works Department hired Nelson Nygaard, a consulting firm, to do a memo looking at whether or not a shuttle could be a possible solution to that congestion. Ultimately, the memo determined that it wasn't the best solution for congestion for a number of reasons. One of them being safety concerns due to the congestion levels there. So since that time, the Public Works Department and the city has spent more time focusing congestion management efforts at schools through its Safe Routes to School program. And so that's an effort to really promote cycling and walking to school through education and encouragement programs. We have a city staff member now that's full-time that goes to schools and works with parents and students and educators in hands-on programs really to help kids get to school in other ways than in a vehicle. So in 2015, the neighboring community of Mountain View started their shuttle program, which was really the first nearby example of a community shuttle. And really at that time, this concept of a shuttle for the tri-school area kind of morphed into the idea of what could a community shuttle look like in Cupertino that serves the whole community. So fast forward to 2018, so last spring, the Public Works Department decided to do an online survey to sort of gauge community interest, ask questions about, you know, if we did have a shuttle, where would you want to go? What times would you want to use the shuttle? And other important things that would help us plan sort of an appropriate service for Cupertino. Questions like, would you rather have a fast shuttle that's more commuter focused or a shuttle that goes to a lot of places that's slower? So during the time that the survey was open, between May and August, we really did a lot of public outreach. We wanted to get this as far and wide as possible. So we used all of the social media networks that we could. We had an article in the Scene, which is distributed to 20,000 households. And we did pop-up events, one at the library where we passed out bookmarks with links to the shuttle website, and one at the senior center. And we were able to get 806 responses from the community. So we were very, very happy about that, because a survey in the summer about a shuttle is not something usually people go bonkers over. So looking at some of the responses, out of that 806 group, 73% of those people that took the survey live in Cupertino, 8% work in Cupertino, 5% were De Anza college students, and 16% live and work in Cupertino, which is helpful information to know. The more important takeaways from the survey for us were that 83% VTA bus service currently is not very effective. Almost 80% say they would love to get to Caltrain, which is another critical thing for us to know. The majority want a faster service, even if it means less stops. They prefer shorter wait times. Another really key element is that most people want to be able to walk to a shuttle. And currently, 86% are driving, and about 69% say they would use a shuttle if one existed. We also had a place in the survey where you could list your top destinations. Caltrain, the Civic Center right here, and City Hall were listed. Main Street, Cupertino, Valco, De Anza College, and this sort of core area of Stevens Creek and De Anza. So not surprising, right? So moving on to our proposal, we spent some time sort of going through the 806 survey responses and all of the data and trying to gather, really look at these responses and see how they would influence what we propose moving forward. And what really we learned and became clear, we reached out to pretty much every shuttle management company and provider and vendor to get proposals on what could a shuttle look like in Cupertino. And it quickly became clear that a Mountain View style shuttle would not meet the needs of what the community asked for in the survey, which was something fast, efficient, something that you could walk to and that's somewhat commuter focused. In addition, the costs are extremely high, and there's a high administrative overhead for that style of shuttle. Upon learning that, we also learned of on-demand services that are being piloted in several cities in California, one with a company called Via. And so we took a look at what that could look like, and that is what we'll be recommending to council. So Via is an on-demand shuttle that uses Mercedes-Benz passenger vans, and it works with a mobile app. You request a ride similar to the way that you do with Lyft or Uber, and then it tells you that you need to walk a short distance, no more than 400 meters, and if you are mobility constricted, it can pick you up at your home, and then it aggregates rides along a similar corridor and drops you off at your destination. Average times would be wait times would be about 15 minutes, and the trip times are between 15 and 17 minutes. And we sort of drew a map of what could be sort of the service area, which is essentially the Cupertino city boundary, but we smoothed out some of the edges so that you could include Kaiser, Palo Alto Medical Foundation to the south. You'd be able to get to Rancho San Antonio open space. And the little circle up here, see it drawn on the screen at the top, is the Sunnyvale Caltrain station. And this is a shuttle that essentially the city would support. It would have city branding on it. It would say City of Cupertino, powered by Via. And the proposal is for 10 vans and hours of operation between 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday. And the cost for this program is almost half of the cost of a traditional shuttle, and we feel would be more beneficial to the community. So the best way really to end, I think, is to show you what it looks like, and then I'll be available for any questions you have. And I apologize in advance. This is the Orange County promotional video, so it's very Orange County.
Via is more like an on-demand bus, creating a future where rigid routes and fixed schedules become a thing of the past, and transit is fully on-demand and dynamic.
Having the ability to call a vehicle when you want it, go where you want to go within a service area, and ride with people in a social context.
So Via is re-engineering public transit. We partnered with Mercedes-Benz because they make world-class vehicles, and we are providing riders with affordable shared rides in premium vehicles. The Metris is the ideal ride-sharing vehicle. In part, that's because the Metris is a high-capacity vehicle, so it fits a lot of passengers, but it doesn't feel like a huge bus.
One of the runs we did not too long ago was a daily run down to Laguna Beach, where we have a lot of surfers. We can go down there, we can pull over, that door pops open. All the stuff they're carrying, they can just pop right out very easily, or they can come back in when they're all done.
The other thing that we really like about the Metris is that it has dual side doors.
When I pull up to pick up somebody, I can just put on my blinkers, hit the button, the door opens automatically, which is great because if we're picking up somebody who's got packages, or perhaps somebody that's got a small child who's got, they're an older person, it's easy for them to get in and out of the car.
So for us, it's an extremely safe vehicle.
One of the features I like about it is the safety features. When we back up, we have the backup camera, of course, you can see where you're going. If there's a car to your right that maybe you can't see and you turn the signal on to try to change lanes, you get a warning light.
The Metris is a very cost-effective vehicle, so it's a luxurious brand. It's able to fit a lot of riders in it, but it's also very fuel efficient.
You'll notice that it's very quiet because the engine is turned off. When we stop at a light like this, instead of the engine idling, the engine drops off and it's just very quiet.
So we've been super happy with the feedback that we've gotten on the Metris. People see it as a new vehicle, they're excited to ride in it.
We'll pull up, the door will open up, people will go, oh, what a nice car. They just aren't expecting this kind of a vehicle, I think, especially for the service we provide.
Some elements of the service are connectivity and having the ability to understand and know where the vehicles are at any given time.
A Via rider books a ride in the app, and it takes multiple people traveling the same way along a direct route that allows aggregation of multiple riders.
This represents a really big step in the future of mobility, specifically in the future of suburban mobility. What you're going to see is ride sharing is going to proliferate. You're going to see a distinction in ownership between the people that want to drive themselves and the people that want to be driven.
So what we're looking to do here is really understand what would it take for people to leave the keys at home.
Mercedes-Benz, vans born to run.
All right. I'm available for any questions you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much for giving us the community shuttle update. I know that our commission, I think, started talking about what the impact of a shuttle would be for, our parks that tend to get very, very congested, as well as any other programming that we might do around the city. So this has been something that's also been on our mind for a number of years now. So we're excited to see this come to fruition. I'm sure that the commissioners have some thoughts and questions. So why don't we go ahead and start on this side?
So would this be free to the user?
So it could be. That's something that council would decide. Most cities charge about $3.50 for a fare, with either reduced or free rates for low income and seniors. But the city council could decide to make it free for everyone.
And how long would you consider the pilot for?
We're recommending an 18-month pilot to allow a few months to ramp up the program, really a year of solid collection of data, and then have enough time at the end where we can go back to council with the opportunity to make it permanent before the pilot ends, so there's no disruption in service.
Okay, and did you look into the ability to hire drivers? I'm sure you saw that article about how hard it is to find school bus drivers, and that a lot of these folks are going to Google and Apple, and so just kind of a question if you looked into that and what the budget would be.
So
into hiring.
One of the appeals of using this rideshare company is that it's a turnkey system. So the cost includes the vehicles and all overhead, including hiring and training of drivers, and fuel. So it's really for the city very low.
It's like a city lift.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. I think that was it for me.
Yeah. So two quick questions. So this is, you said Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.? 8 p.m.?
8 p.m.
And that means the students can also request this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when is it starting, when you said that this?
So just to clarify, anyone riding alone has to be 14 years or older, but any age is welcome with a parent. If it's approved by council, we anticipate a couple months necessary to negotiate the contract, and then they need 3 months once the contract's been negotiated to launch a program. So potentially by this summer.
Okay, and the last question is that you already mentioned it about the collecting the data and the usage of it. So you do have some goals during partly when you present to the council. You may have, okay, this is the data, this is what my KPI, key performance indicators, based on that we will declare that as a success.
Yes.
Or not. So you do have those performance metrics.
We do. So the way that for this type of on-demand shuttle, the way that performance is gauged best is through a utilization number, which is the number of riders in the van per hour. West Sacramento is in the middle of a pilot right now. They're doing approximately 400 trips per day right now, and their rate's around 4. So we're predicting that we'll be between 3.5 and 4 here in Cupertino. And so, of course, the higher that number, the better. It's that many more vehicles off the road. And we will have access, if this is approved, to have a dashboard that shows all of that data anonymously, anonymized data that we'll have access to.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have several questions. And first, you said Cupertino's situation is different from Mountain View. So you decide the shuttle type should be on demand instead of fixed route. I just wondering, so what's the difference between the two cities?
So one of the big differences between the Mountain View program and really here is that Mountain View has a TMA up and running already. which is a transit management agency that connects, that has a large fleet of commuter-style shuttles that connect the Mountain View Transit Center with the North Bay Shore campuses. So their shuttle really is more intended towards daytime riders. It only operates between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., and it was never intended as a commuter shuttle. So they have 50 stops, and it takes a very long time, over an hour, to make your way around Mountain View. And that's what they wanted. And in Cupertino, the survey results and even just the casual conversations that we had with people really reflected a different use case. This shuttle program is really aimed more at congestion relief and providing mobility options for people that don't have it.
Okay, and I have another question. So during the pilot period, how many people were served? Is there any comparison between fixed route and on-demand, two models, or you only provide one type of service?
Yeah, that's really hard to say. There are certainly pros and cons to both types of services. The fixed route transit generally works better in higher density areas. If it is in a higher density area, it can sometimes have higher ridership. But in low density areas, it becomes very hard. And the challenge that we saw when we looked at fixed routes in Cupertino is that the walk times to get to the shuttle would be so long that we didn't feel people would use it.
Okay, and I have some other question about if we really start to run the program and many people are using it, is it possible that it will become very slow because many people want to book the shuttle and they have to wait the waiting time?
That would be a great problem to have. That's a good question. It is possible. So if it became wildly successful, and we're proposing initially based on, there's a sort of a simulation, a model that VIA has to predict ridership. If it turned out that the real world ridership was much higher than that, you could run into a situation where the wait times would get a little bit longer, and then we could make a decision, or council could make a decision to add a vehicle at a cost of about $40 per transit hour.
Okay, and before we just increase the budget and add more shuttles, have you considered any priority model, just like people living in the, if the road is busier than other areas, they have higher priority, or maybe elder person or someone with health issues, they can have higher priority. Is it possible to put in the model? I'm just wondering.
Anything's possible. We hadn't discussed that, but one of the things we did think about was maybe having fare zones where you have a higher fare for longer trips, so it helps to subsidize the program so that we don't run into that problem. The company is very flexible, so we can certainly ask them about that idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my last question, and I'm wondering how the user can use it. So is it only way to use it by the smartphone app, or you can accept phone call to book a shuttle?
That's a great question. So you can use a mobile app. You can also use a toll-free number to make a reservation if you don't have a mobile phone. And then the fares are, if there is a fare, most cities will also sell like a weekly pass and a monthly pass.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, I have one more follow-up question. So if you, based on the pilot results, do you see a possibility where some of the routes are frequently used and there could be a possibility of having even a fixed route? I'm coming up with a mixed option. So do you have a provision as well in the 18 months? Yeah, we looked at it. These are all on demand at the same time. Looks like this particular route is being used highly and frequently on a regular basis. It's better even to run fixed time shuttles on that route so that you'll have on demand as well as fixed. I just want to make sure that you have a provision within that 18-month survey, so come back after that. You can have a mixed mode.
Absolutely. Our goal is to do the pilot and look at all of the data and make informed decisions. If at the end of the pilot it turns out all of the trips are along fixed routes, we may reconsider at the end of the pilot whether or not that's the best option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I have a couple of questions as well. Given that we are the Parks and Rec department, in the summer, we, if this gets started by then, we do have a series of neighborhood events that will be starting around the city, including on weekends. So I wanted to know, I know that if you could just remind me again what the times are, and if there's a way that for those events we can extend them, either extend it to a Saturday or Sunday during that time, or if something goes later, because we do have evening movie nights and things like that that people might be able to use this for.
Yes, we are able to add time for special events. The time that we're proposing, which was based on the survey, and council may decide that they want to run it longer or shorter. Initially, we're proposing 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday from 9 to 5 p.m. But essentially, with the contract with this vendor, it's up to the city to add hours, and they just charge you. It's a monthly fee. So it literally is like an Uber or Lyft for the city.
So excellent. That makes me happy because we want to make sure that folks can get to and from our events. Have y'all talked to, I know we're still in the process of getting city council's approval, but have y'all talked to the chamber and Rotary? Because I can imagine that many businesses, any place that serves alcohol, anything like that could also be, and schools as well. Do you have existing partnerships with them?
We do with the schools. They are aware of the shuttle and very excited about the potential of a shuttle. We haven't really reached out to the chamber yet, but I'll put them on my list. We have reached out also, I forgot to mention, to Sunnyvale to see if they'd be interested in partnering with us, because right now they're shown as an island. So we're trying to encourage them to jump on board. And Mountain View is also trying to consider what to do with their shuttle. It's not a permanent shuttle either. So we're trying to get our neighbors to maybe get involved with this.
The other partnership is all of the recreation and organizations that we have in the city, especially when there's sports games and things like that, where it's very, very hard to find parking. I think this would be a really great solution. So any of our, baseball teams, soccer teams, other organizations like that would probably be very interested in something like this as well. The final thing, I'm actually a little bit curious on the vendor side. So I know that Via's raised their Series C. Have you gotten any feedback from the other cities that have used them so far? And what is the primary concern in terms of using the vendor?
We don't have any concerns with the vendor, or we wouldn't be recommending them. The cities that are currently using them in California is the city of West Sacramento, and also in Los Angeles, the Metro, the Transportation Authority, is using them to increase the transit shed at stations where there's really poor connectivity for bikes and pedestrians. Marin County also and Orange County are using them for their technology, although the transit agencies run their own shuttles, which is a separate business model they have. But we don't have really concerns with this company. We think it's the most efficient use of public funds and delivering a better product than the more traditional hop-on, hop-off for Cupertino. We still are advocating for high-capacity transit to Cupertino. We don't see this as a replacement. We see this as something we can do immediately to address congestion while continuing to advocate for more high-capacity connections to the regional transportation network.
Excellent. And I do actually have two more. So Lyft used to have a hotspot format, if you're familiar with that. Is that something that VIA would consider for us if it's relevant?
From my understanding, they would be open to working with us on anything.
On something like that. And then the last thing is that if there are other organizations within Cupertino that want to take advantage of VIA for their own special event that isn't necessarily something that the city is organizing, but they might want to organize it for themselves, is there some kind of package option that they could, either buy into or add hours to the Cupertino shuttle service for their event in the city?
I think if the event were to take place during a non-peak time where the vehicles weren't being used by Cupertino, it's a possibility. But since we'll be subsidizing them, we wouldn't want that to eat into our core service. Yep. So I think possibly, but I would have to check with them.
Okay, great. That's it in terms of the questions that I have. Would you like us to make a formal motion to recommend this to the city council or show our support for, or lack thereof, depending on where all the commissioners sit?
I would say it's completely up to the commission. We're in the way that it's going to council. We're not technically making a recommendation. We're laying out the survey results and sort of presenting the case for what we think is the most appropriate, but it's entirely up to the commission if you'd like to ask for some sort of motion in support.
Great. So I would like to entertain the motion to support the proposed Cupertino shuttle using VIA. Looking for a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to really support, and this is really interesting concept. We are rolling it out for the benefit of community, so definitely I would like to support. When you go with that, even though there is no recommendation, at least you presented it and we are excited about it for what the service you bring it to community. So I would like to make a motion as a Park and Recreation Commission. We recommend this to move forward.
I second his recommendation.
Excellent. Do we have any discussion on this? Or can we move to a vote? Excellent. We can go ahead and move to a vote. Excellent. And with that, the Parks and Recreation Commission has voted unanimously to support the community shuttle project to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your time.
My pleasure.
All right, fantastic. We are going to continue now in the order that was originally listed on the agenda. Again, for folks in the audience, blue cards up in the front on the right-hand side. Please, 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 we'd love to hear what you have to say. So again, up in the front on the right-hand side, this is your opportunity to speak directly to us on any of the agenda items that are listed. Excellent. Going ahead to old business item number 2, which is receive the update on the citywide Parks and Recreation System Master Plan.
Good evening, Chair Tombe, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Gail Seeds. I am the Park Improvement Manager here in Cupertino, now in the Public Works Department. And I just wanted to briefly update you where we are in the citywide Parks and Recreation System Master Plan process. You will recall that in January we issued a draft master plan, this hardy thing, and it was very lively in January. We met with the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission, we held a teen and youth forum, we had a public workshop, we brought the document to this commission on January 24th. In February, we went to the Planning Commission and we went to the City Council, and we invited feedback from folks via electronic comment cards and written comment cards. And so we've gotten excellent feedback from the community about the document, about some things to polish a bit and refine and what they'd like to see in it. So we've been hard at work since then. We are tentatively set up to go back to the commission on April 16th. That is tentative. It is to be announced via an agenda process, but the purpose would be to close the loop on the scope of the actions, the things that should be evaluated under CEQA. Because when we release a revised draft master plan, we will also release the environmental clearance evaluation and all the documents that go with it. So we'd like to make sure that in the eyes of the council that we have captured the range of things that they would like to have evaluated. And it's okay to not do things that are in the plan, but we'd like to make sure that the extent of the actions represents the full range of things that we should be evaluating in the master plan process. That way, if there's anything we've missed in adding some additional comments, some additional refinements, we could add it now before we go through the rest of the environmental evaluation. That would avoid backtracking down the road. And assuming that this all rolls forward as we hope, we will release a new and improved draft plan with environmental clearance documents, and those will be available for the community. There will be a public comment period and comments invited, in particular on the CEQA documents and their content, and those comments, the documents, will go to the Environmental Review Committee for their concurrence, and response to comments will be prepared, and the package will be aired with the community and with this commission and go forward to the council. In that process, there's some legal steps to it and noticing requirements and so on. So if things are fairly smooth, then potentially the plan could be adopted later in the summertime after we have aired it suitably. So that is how things may be unfolding, and we wanted you to be apprised as to what was going on and what we're working on. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, so that's very exciting. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns? Oh, wait, excuse me. Clarifying questions. We have a oral communication.
Did I hear you say there's a meeting for us on April 16th?
Oh, no, I meant the city council.
Oh, thank you.
Pardon,
Okay, yeah.
Pardon if I misspoke.
Okay.
You said the new and improved plan, the next draft. When is that expected to be issued?
We
revised draft.
Yeah, we will seek the council's feedback in a couple of weeks, and then presumably that would go out in May. A refined draft plan with associated environmental clearance documents.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. If there's no additional clarifying questions, we have one comment card. Sherman Carter, please come on up.
Thank you very much. I respectfully request the body to remove Memorial Park from the consideration as a potential location for any of the new major facilities listed in the master plan. The new aquatics facility, Performing Fine Arts Center, and the gymnasium complex and multi-use recreational center. I feel the Memorial Park is unsuitable for each of these major facilities, and that their addition would be detrimental to businesses in the area. Memorial Park has limited parking during various festivals and other such events. The Oaks Shopping Center and the Whole Foods Market, which are both quite near the park, have to put up no event parking signs to deal with the overflow of people looking for parking. This does not stop people from parking in those lots and that are intended for customers. We understand that there is an arrangement with De Anza Community College, but people still seem to prefer parking over at the Oaks and at the Whole Foods. Putting any of the listed major facilities at Memorial Park will make this a constant issue instead of an occasional issue for those businesses. Also, putting any of those into Memorial Park would require the loss of green space and permeable soils. That this reduces groundwater uptake and increases the risk of flooding in the area. Memorial Park and the residents of Cupertino would be better served by increasing the green space rather than decreasing it. It's also particularly unsuitable for the gymnasium complex, as it is already very close to the Cupertino Sports Center, which is roughly the same sort of location. Creating a separate but similar facility in Memorial Park will decrease the money taken in by the sports center and will not increase the number of Cupertino residents served. Within Memorial Park, there is an existing small outdoor theater with a large amount of green space where people can sit and lay down and watch a performance or just have a picnic when there's no performance going. This area can admittedly do with some improvements, but replacing it with a new Performing and Fine Arts Center would require sacrificing the green space and ruining the multi-use nature of the location. Memorial Park is also across the street from De Anza Community College, which features 2 performing arts centers, the VPAC and the Flint Center. The VPAC is also a fine arts center. So having a performing and fine arts center at Memorial Park would be superfluous. It's also not a good place for an aquatics facility. Memorial Park previously had a pond system that attracted ducks and geese. The droppings of these animals were unsightly and presented a potential health hazard. Does that mean I'm out of time?
Yes, it does, unfortunately. All right. Thank you very much for your time. Excellent. Now we can go ahead and dive into comments on this. And I do want to just remind the folks in the audience that there's going to be additional time for you to give feedback on the plan, as Gail had mentioned, and there'll be an environmental report for everyone to look at as well. So this is not the last stop, and so please do continue to follow along on that path. Any questions from the commissioners?
I do have one question. I know is there any takeaways from I know you were presented to many commissions and council and a lot of feedback. I have seen few of them. Is there any key takeaways you wanted us to know that, okay, this is what we planned, and the majority of them either they loved it or something they don't want to and they wanted us to go back and do some research? Any 1 or 2 top level key takeaways from the feedback?
I would note that we heard high interest in adding green space, adding park space, and in particular addressing park deficient areas and underserved areas of our community. There was a common theme there. We heard from a lot of folks that there's high interest in smaller enhancements to our park system, things like basketball hoops or adding shade, kind of smaller amenities that would make a big difference to a lot of people immediately, perhaps more so than building one of those large major new facilities. A number of folks felt that those are not immediately important. And there was also seemed to be some confusion as to the content of the master plan and the implication that the city was going to build any or all of those items, and to make it clear that the things in the plan were there because they might be desired in the future, but that there was no commitment or requirement for the city to do any of the potential projects or enhancements or any of the potential recommendations. So the refined draft will have some narrative, and also some of the things we heard that were those kind of short-term common desires. We'll put a little more spotlight on those.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I just want to, just because we've been through this process for a number of years now, the things that are even featured in there are not just, the consultant ideating themselves. It's from a need that a community member or a group of community members have asked for or requested, correct?
Yes, Chair Tombe, this process has been very community driven.
Excellent. So it's not random people saying random things. All right. Are there any other comments and or questions? Excellent. So April 16th, this will be coming to, correct?
Tentatively.
Tentatively, April 16th. When will we know for certain if it will be?
Next Wednesday.
Okay.
Things will be firmed up. So then we will get the word out to everyone that wishes to communicate with the project team or the council further.
Fantastic. Is there any way that we can send a notice out to the folks that have either attended an in-person workshop or that have responded to one of our surveys, just to kind of let them know where we are in the process?
Yeah, we have maintained an active email mailing list, and we notify people about all of these meetings where an action will take place or deliberation will take place.
Excellent. And if somebody would like to add themselves to that, how could they do that?
they can go to the city website and sign up on the notifications portion of the city website. There is also a link from the master plan website. An easy way to get to the website for our master plan is to go to cupertino.org/parksmp for master plan. So that's a nice shortcut to get straight to all that information about this process to date.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for your years of hard work as well.
Thank you, Chair Tambe, and commissioners and members of the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, now to the meaty portion of the evening, which I believe many of you are here for. Do we have any more? Okay. Is item number 3, which is the discussion and recommendation to City Council on the priority of the community funding grant applications received for the fiscal year 2019 and 2020.
Chair Tambe, may I interject? So I do need to recuse myself again, so I'll go sit out in the foyer. And when you're finished deliberating, could you invite me back in, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
As a gentle reminder, everybody in the audience is welcome to speak on the agenda items that we are talking about today. There are blue cards up in the front on the right-hand side, and this is your opportunity to talk to us about your organization, or if you are a friend of the organization and you would like to highlight that as well, you can do so. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. So at the previous Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on March 7th, 2019, staff introduced the updated community funding program, which included the updated application, the updated process, and newly developed evaluation criteria. At that time, the commissioners finalized the maximum amount of points allowed for each evaluation criteria and developed a rating system for those points. Staff asked Parks and Recreation commissioners to evaluate all of these applications based on the new evaluation criteria. So what you see here is a copy of what the commissioners were provided with. This is the final rating sheet that was decided upon at the last meeting in March. And so each commissioner at that time evaluated all the applications using this rating sheet. Staff compiled, after commissioners rated all of them, they had emailed all of their results to staff, and at that time, staff compiled all of the data for the commissioners to review here at tonight's meeting. This chart here provides the average scores of all the applicants. So there were 24 applicants, and the highest ranked applicant is at the top here. So you could see on the far right column, the average score ranged from 81.5, with the lowest score being 34.5. The grand total of all requests are $228,550. If you could look here, all the green scores generally are your higher scores. The red are generally on the lower end of the scale. You'll see a little bit of a white background also, and those are the scores that are more in the middle. And you see some darker green, some darker red. Those basically are showing the higher scores. So like a score of 90 and the scores of 100 would be darker red. I'm sorry, yes, darker green, yes, thank you. So with this chart here, staff is requesting the commission to review the results of the rating sheets and to discuss and provide a recommendation for funding to council. And the next slide, what we'll show you are different options of what you can consider in your funding recommendation. So one of the options is to go with a top 10 average or the top 10 median. Another option is to take scores of 70 and above only. So that would be average scores of 70 and above, or median scores of 70 and above. And staff is also welcoming your suggestions if you have any other ideas of how you want to proceed in your discussion on funding recommendations. So if we take a look at this chart here, the top portion are the top 10 average scores. So as you can see, the bottom portion here are the top 10 median scores. So really, although the ranking order is slightly different, and the top 10 ends up being the same groups. As you can see, the total amount requested is $89,800 if you decided to go with top 10. You don't have to. You could change that as you wish. So that is one option here. The next option shows average and median scores of 70 and above only. Now, if you take the average score of 70 and above only, you will be funding 7 applicants, and the grand total there would be $60,300. If you go by the median score of 70 and above, you're looking at funding 10 applicants for a total of $89,800. And just as a reminder again, you also are able to fund more groups, maybe with less funding awarded for each group. Just remember there's all different ways to consider how you want to fund these organizations. So at this time, if you want me to jump to a particular slide on what option you want to start with, or if you have any thoughts, we can begin the discussion at this time.
We will ask clarifying questions first and then get feedback from the public, get some public comment. Do we have any clarifying questions? Discussion will come, but clarifying questions.
What are the chances we'll get $228,000? I mean, we're really little, I mean, that was sort of facetious, but we're a little working in the dark because we don't have a budget. So sure, I would go with the high, I mean, my clarifying question is, I would go with the highest and fund as many as, there were no bad requests. So any thoughts on what we should do with that?
Sure. So as mentioned in the past, staff, we provided a range of $30,000 to $75,000. That's been historically, those were the awarded amounts. And last year, it was about $52,000 that was awarded, and that was, I believe, for 5 organizations. We'd like to keep it within that range. However, with that said, as a recommendation, you can recommend the full amount. I'm not sure what will exactly get funded, but council direction was to have the Parks and Recreation Commission really take a look at all the applications and do the whole vetting process and evaluation and provide some type of recommendation. Now, if you ask to present, if you want to fund all 200,000, it's like, well, what recommendation are they providing? You can do that. You can have a ranking system that you recommend X amount, you'd like to fund if they are able to, and they will, approve that. But, I would suggest having some type of recommendation in addition to that.
Yeah, I think I'm on similar lines, the question. So if you give this recommendation, assuming the top 10, the council can decide on if it is 75, then they will mark at the bottom, or is that the way the stack ranking? Is that the way it works? Maybe let me ask you differently. So there are the top 10, which counts to 89. If they have only 70, then obviously only top 8 will get it, correct? That's a stack ranking. When I say stack ranking, 1 through 8. Is that the model city is going to use it?
Actually, that is unknown at this time. So perhaps that could be part of the recommendation. If they happen to choose a lesser amount, that recommendation from Parks and Recreation Commission would be to fund, only take out X amount from each organization, or just go with a ranking system of, taking out the bottom 3 of that top 10 or something. I'm not sure.
Did you have any clarifying questions?
I think I agree. We should put more organization on the recommendation list so the council can have a wider range to make decision and got more information maybe.
Okay.
I'd like to make a complaint. So, and this is not, you're the messenger, so this is not you, but, we're being asked to do this, which we take very seriously, and I think the council either should do this themselves or give guidance. And I know you think you're being helpful by saying you could do any of these things, but that's not helpful. I mean, any's too big, so yes, we can give everybody $5,000. Any's sort of, it would be better to have some either background on how they did it before or their expectations, because we did all this work and I would hate for it to go to council and they go, oh, we didn't mean that. Or anyway, in the future, it would be better to have some distinct guidelines that help us do this as opposed to any. Any's not a great guideline. That's something you can pass on.
All right, so we do have a robust discussion ahead of us, but we also have several community members ready to speak on behalf of the organizations that they are a part of or that they are involved with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off 3 names. The first person will be the first person speaking. If I could have the second person come up to the first seat so that way we can go back to back. When you come up, please state your full name as well as the organization that you're representing. All right, let's get started. These got a little out of order. That was definitely later. Okay, and I can't read everybody's handwriting, so my apologies on pronunciation. Breathe, California, Dr. S. Lula. Speaker number 1. Next we have Heart of the Valley, Alex Bennett. And after that, we will have Carrie Ziedman from the Historical Society. Go ahead and come on up, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes. My name is Dr. Slochna Lula, and I'm here to thank you all for the opportunity of granting a proposal for the Seniors Breathe Easy program. So I'm the board secretary and medical director for Breathe California for almost 40 years. And I'm a physician just retired from Kaiser. And I've been a lung specialist. So I'm continuously in the field for fighting lung disease, healthy air qualities, and we are trying to address the current lungish threats that are there in the youngsters, that is vaping and wildfires, and also the existing diseases of COPD and tuberculosis and asthma. And of course, a lot of seniors have breathing problems at night with sleep apneas. So we are trying to find programs to help Cupertino residents over 60 years of age. As a physician, I volunteer with a number of organizations, including the Seniors at India Center. The 2,500 that we've requested for this wellness programs will serve about 200 seniors at senior centers and other communities locations in Cupertino. The goals are to increase seniors' understanding their health risks and provide prevention services, safety in the seniors' home, increase the programs for stopping smoking, and better quality air control. Health education will be provided on various topics in different languages in different communities. We discuss things of use of medication when there are viral infections like influenza, and how to fight indoor air pollutions, dangers of tobacco, secondhand smoke, and also sleep disorders. So we'll be training professional caregivers to develop greater confidence, and we'll also focus on some healthy living habits such as exercise, yoga, and we'll do health screenings and promote smoking cessation. And if necessary, for the home visits, we'll look at the areas where the seniors live and assist them in sort of preventing falls. It can review their respiratory equipments for the sleep apneas and any other information if needed, then refer them to different programs. We hope to serve about 700 Cupertino residents with our program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Alex Bennett, followed by Carrie Ziedman, and who's next? Lauren Merriman from Friends of Deer Hollow Farm.
First, thank you very much for your scoring for Heart of the Valley. Thank you for our being in the top 10. After having heard the various ways of slicing and dicing the money at this point, I'd like to, if I may, characterize us, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions as well, but hopefully may characterize us as sort of a goose that can lay golden eggs for Cupertino. In that this grant request is to conduct an outreach program that will hopefully increase the number of clients that Heart of the Valley serves in Cupertino, and we serve them free of charge to either Cupertino residents or the city of Cupertino. So if we succeed in our objective of creating 4 new users of our services in Cupertino, then what will happen is they will continue to be served in years into the future. And as things continue, then we could hope that as word spreads, that even more users will continue to request services. And I would also add that in addition to the direct services that we provide to residents of Cupertinos who are seniors living independently, we provide them some peace of mind and engagement with the community. And with respect to that engagement in the community, this program will also serve in terms of increasing the number of volunteerism over time and also increase the number of contact that Cupertino residents have with seniors for sort of a more intergenerational connections within Cupertino.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Cupertino Historical Society, followed by Friends of Deer Hollow Farm, and then we have Bill Kerr from CHS.
Hi, my name is Carrie Ziedman, and I'm a new docent with the Cupertino Historical Society. And I donate my time there because the work that CHS does in our community is important. However, we can't run the society without the financial assistance that allows us to maintain the museum space and to purchase and preserve our historical artifacts, and that's why we're here tonight. People from all backgrounds call this place home, but most don't know the amazing history of our little valley. They don't know the diversity of peoples that have come together not just in the last 30 years, but over the last 500 years, melding rich cultures and traditions.
You have more time.
Thank you. To create the unique community we all enjoy today. Native Americans, Spanish, Russian, French, Chinese, English, Irish, and so many more came to this valley from all over and added their voices to the story. Mine is one of those stories. My ancestors were among the first Spanish explorers to come to North America in the 1500s. At that time, this valley was populated by villages of Ohlone Indians that lived off the abundant nuts and berries and fish and shellfish that this beautiful valley provided. In 1760, as soldiers, they guarded the missions during California's mission period, and they came with the De Anza expedition. In the early 1800s, they were the Dons, the wealthy owners that shaped this valley and had vast cattle ranches as far as you could see. They were here for the gold rush, and they fought in the Mexican-American War. In 1847, my family of Quaker abolitionists from Iowa came west on the Oregon Trail, bringing 700 fruit tree saplings on ox carts. They came to Oregon and then Washington before settling in California, and those fruit trees, apricots, prunes, and cherries, flourished, leading this area being called the Valley of Heart's Delight. Now the valley has taken on a new identity and is called Silicon Valley. Instead of apricots and prunes, we produce cutting-edge technology. I came here today not because I'm proud of my heritage, which I am, but I came here because the history of this valley isn't just my story. Our history is a tapestry woven by many strands of many colors coming together to make us what we are today. It's a living thing that continues to grow and change forever, and it will be shaped by future generations in ways we can't even imagine. And it doesn't matter if your family has been here for 400 years or 4 years. If you live or work here, you're a part of that story and part of a history that belongs to all of us. We're the caretakers of that history and are obliged to pass it down to the next generation. Along with the stories, the Cupertino Historical Society collects and preserves artifacts from the past. We have the museum where visitors can see those items and hear the stories about life in the valley. We also bring artifacts to the schools and use them to help the children understand the past. We let them see for themselves what going to school and living on a farm was like and what the area where they now live was like 100 years ago. We feel it's important to show the children that history is not just boring dates and places. It's a fascinating timeline of amazing adventures, hardworking pioneers, and clashing cultures, lived by real, live, breathing and feeling people that are just like themselves. Knowing what life was like in the past gives our children a greater appreciation for what they have now, and more importantly, it ignites a spark of imagination for what the future can bring and what part they might play in its discovery. And as we here in Silicon Valley know, that spark can lead to some pretty amazing things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Deer Hollow Farm, Lauren Merriman.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Lauren Merriman. I'm the president of the Friends of Deer Hollow Farm. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Parker Chamberlain, who is the person that submitted the grant application to you for consideration. One reason I wanted to come tonight is just to thank the city of Cupertino. The city of Cupertino, about 9 or 10 years ago, was one of the first cities to join with the city of Mountain View and the Friends of Deer Hollow Farm in the effort to, excuse me, getting over a cold, in the effort to kind of save the farm when the city of Mountain View was having some financial challenges. So just a huge thank you to the city of Cupertino. And while the funding process has changed a little bit over the years, I just want to express my thanks to your city and to your commission for considering our grant this year. Deer Hollow Farm is located in the Rancho San Antonio Open Space Preserve. It is on Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District land, and again, it's operated by the city of Mountain View. They offer a variety of different programs. It is open to the public, as well as offers school year programs to elementary age kids, summer camp programs, and they also have farm animals, obviously, which can help teach our children about farm to table and where our animals and our food can come from. Our organization does all of our fundraising in order to afford scholarships to lower income children to be able to attend these farm events. And this year, our grant request is to help us fund the rehabilitation of our white barn, which is an iconic building and a huge asset to the farm. Not only does it house our actual goats, but it houses all of our hay and alfalfa for the rest of the animals. This building is, I think, 160 years old and in need of some repair. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to continuing our mission. I'll also just mention that we recently, last year, were able to work with the West Valley Community Services Agency solely to offer summer camp scholarships. So we look forward to that partnership this year as well. And I will end it with that, but just wanted to give our thanks and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Bill Kerr, followed by Rocky Aroda from Enid Talent, and then Sharon from the Historical Society.
I've been a Cupertino resident for over 50 years and have participated as a board member on the Cupertino Historical Society for about the last 10 years. Of course, if you've read our application, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation, recordation, and dissemination of the Cupertino history, culture, and life. We are the only organization doing this for the city and its residents. You've heard about our museum from our previous speaker. We collaborate with various city departments, library, and participate in city events. We need to sustain our collections and be the primary resource for our history. We strive to benefit the community, bringing Cupertino's unique history to our residents. Hope that you consider our application for funds, and of course we thank you for the funding that the city has provided in past years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Rocky, followed by Sharon, and then Gail from the Cupertino Historical Society.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. Thanks for letting me speak. Just a quick backgrounder. In '95, I moved to the Bay Area from Orange County and moved to Sunnyvale. And we were going to have our first baby in 2000. We made sure that she would be a Cupertino baby for one specific reason. There's a beautiful startup culture here. There's a culture of new ideas, new energy, new cares, ways of sharing, ways of networking, and we just knew that we wanted to be part of this community. There's a competitive energy here, but there's also a synergy. And we noticed that as she was growing up, she was heavily involved in lots and lots of different activities. As a matter of fact, when she was 5 years old, she came home crying because her friends were in more classes than her. She had a friend that was also not only in Indian dance and Indian writing, in Kumon and this and that, but her friend had Chinese as well as ballet, and she wanted to sign up for those classes. So that eagerness to learn. In middle school, started the volunteer culture, and she started volunteering, and it was like she was washing dishes at senior centers. It was probably when she was about 13, 14, and she realized that she has all these skills, so she came up with the idea to ask them if she could actually do performances at the senior centers using her cultural backgrounds and things like that. So 3 students formed, and in the matter of 3 years, it's grown to a pool of about 150 kids on shoestring budgets. They literally, we were measuring success not in number of people we got to present to, or to perform with, but in the number of people that would cry after each event. Seniors just bawling in tears if they heard a Beatles song, or a kid spending time with them. That then is spun off into tech centers where the boys wanted stuff to do, so the boys are helping do technical help for seniors, but then the seniors wanted to get involved. And now the seniors are basically saying, and they're creating artwork for foster kids. There's this synergy, there's a pool of 150 people, and there isn't much need for money, but one of the successes I'm seeing here is that you guys are really granting good, powerful vision and dollars towards extremely established ventures. Top 10 this way, top 10 that way. The seed of thought that I would share with you is that even on shoestring budgets, I think you mentioned that there's a lot of good ideas. We were part of the last meeting, and it's beautiful. This is an amazing city, but as a soft suggestion, you may want to look at new energies, even with minimal footprints, even if it's a small dollar. The amount of success expands beyond what has been continuing for years and years.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Sharon, followed by Gail, followed by Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Sharon Blaine, and I thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm here to speak about the Cupertino Historical Society and the museum. We are all part of history, and history continues. So even where you think of history as being a long time ago, it's really not. It's right now, it's all of you, it's all of us. And so we, the Historical Society, are the keepers of Cupertino's history. We do that in many ways. We do it through oral histories, we do it through artifacts. Believe it or not, we have We're the repository of, or depository of all the city's papers. All the city history is down at that museum or in our storage. We are not asking for funding for a specific event because our activities go on all year round, year after year after year. But I thought you'd like to know that our expenses continue year after year after year. And in order to keep our artifacts and our papers and all in good condition, we have to pay for storage. We have to pay for insurance. Wait till you see the next exhibit. The insurance cost is phenomenal. We share our exhibits not only at the museum. I don't know if you know that at the fire station on Torrey and Stevens Creek, you go into the lobby and you'll see our wonderful pumper fire engine that was used in Cupertino years ago, plus old-fashioned fire equipment. That's our stuff on loan at the fire station for the public. We also have just loaned a portable forge and a lot of blacksmithing equipment to McClellan Ranch for the blacksmith shop, because we have kept all of these things, and now it'll be on exhibit at the blacksmith shop, and that's going to be actually used. There will be a blacksmith who will be there using the equipment. Everybody will be able to see how these things were used. We need the money to continue doing our programs. We have speakers, we have events, we have exhibits. You have the grant application. You don't need me to go through it over and over and over again. But we do ask you for your support, and I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Jennifer, followed by Carol, followed by Sujata. Oh. Oh, sorry. Yes, Gail. Sorry. Gail, you were first. My apologies.
Hi, I'm Gail Fretwell-Hugger, and I belong to the Cupertino Historical Society. You guys are going to get bombarded tonight. Sharon and Bill and Carrie used most of my best lines, and most of the best figures, too. I have to commend Carrie. I don't know if you noticed, but she is in costume tonight. Stand up. This is how Carrie looks when we go as part of the traveling trunk team to all the schools to present to the students. We did over 100 students this week over at Lincoln School on McClellan, and I cannot begin to tell you how much fun it is to go out and do our traveling trunk program for the school children. What's really funny is their reactions. Somebody ought to tape this for television. One of the best lines I heard from one of the kids recently was, after I had explained there wasn't any electricity in the old days and you didn't have iPads and iPods and Xboxes, at which point their eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you hear, ooh, you know. And when I got all done talking, one little boy came up and said to me, "Did you have any fun when you were little?" And I assured him that, yes, we had lots of fun back in the old days. So the Cupertino Historical Society is not just about the old days. It's about today. It's going to be about the future. It's going to be about the stories of all the people who have come to Cupertino and all the contributions that they have made, not just to our city, but our county, our state. And so to do this on an ongoing basis, like Sharon said, we do need funding, we do need support. And we also need your ideas. We welcome your ideas. So I'd just like to urge you to support us, and thank you for your past support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we have Jennifer, followed by Carol, followed by Sujata.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jennifer Furlong, and I'm the Executive Director of the Cupertino Historical Society and Museum. I have the most amazing group of volunteers and board members, some of whom you've heard from this evening, and I'd like to thank them for coming and showing their support for our organization. It seems as though, based on the rankings, that we might be fighting a bit of an uphill battle, particularly with a couple of you who maybe aren't as familiar with our organization and what we do and what we bring to the community of Cupertino. You've heard about our traveling trunk program, where we go to local elementary schools. We've even been getting requests from outside of Cupertino because our program is so well known and so beloved to come and present to school children. All of our programming that we offer is totally free to the community. We'll be having an event on May 17th to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. We are hosting a dinner with 2 speakers, and this event is totally free and open to the public. We have 3 to 5 exhibits a year. Our upcoming exhibit, which one of my members alluded to, is on early computing history, and we are receiving from a collector in Italy a collection that is almost priceless of early computing artifacts. There were 3 books published last year using research from our collection. As members mentioned, we are the unofficial archive of the city of Cupertino. We've been around since 1966, with the museum opening with the founding of the Quinlan Center in 1990. We are an established organization. We have thoughtfully and conservatively used funds that we've received from this community funding grant in the past. And I'm ardently and passionately asking you to consider our application quite seriously. We can't continue to do as responsibly as we have done in the past, offer all of the programs and services to the community of Cupertino without your support. It's vitally important that we continue our mission. We provide a locus of identity in the community of Cupertino. For a community as diverse as our community, and a community that's facing increasing homogenization, the Historical Society is there. We're the mirror to modern society. History, as our members have discussed, is not some dusty artifact. Yes, it is those things, and we love those things, but it's happening every day. Your history, I'm history. We are all making history daily. Please, please support us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we have Carol.
Hello, I'm Carol Stanek, and I'm not representing any organization today. I put my nerd hat on, and I looked at the results of your surveys, and I noticed a couple of things in the scoring of the way that it was done. And before I get to that, one of the things I was curious about as I looked at this, for those that were funded in previous years, I didn't see on here, and maybe you have the information, is how much was given in previous years. You know, have the amounts gone up, or are they the same as previous years? So that might be some way to look at some of the previous years and the current amounts. But if you look at the way you scored it, I don't know, let's see, what do I need to do? Oh, look at that. Is it in focus? What's remarkable is that really all the greens are very much across the board towards the top, and the reds are at the bottom. And so what that tells me is that there's a fair amount of agreement between you on many of these things. And I think some of that has to do with the way the criteria was structured. It focused you on things that you had previously decided in your minds, gee, what kind of organizations are we looking to give grants to, and what would benefit us? And what it allows you to do is sort of take the subjectivity out and try to be objective by looking at the criteria and scoring by that. So I think that's a good thing. What did jump out at me is that the ranges that you used were very different among the commissioners. We had ranges going from 0 to 100 from one commissioner, and another commissioner that was 38 to the high of 73. And what that does is it gives different weight to different people who are scoring. And so when you're using just a raw score, and even if you're averaging it, that can give a lot of different results in terms of weighting. So one of the things I did is I said, what if you just ranked them based on your own scores? So if 100 for someone was their number one, and it was number one for someone else at 73, and we just did the ranking based on the rating.
Oh.
What I did was I looked at it, and what's remarkable is that 6 of the top 8 are exactly the same. And so that's a good thing. But what you look at is the top 10 are exactly the same, but there are 2 that come in and out. And so it's interesting that staff actually looked at the top 10 when they were going through this. I don't know if you can see it. So that was where I drew a line, because the top 10 were the same in either methodology doing it from you, but it came to $90,000, which is more, and then that was where I started asking the questions. I know that you were hoping for a natural break somewhere. I think you don't get it, unfortunately, and so this was just another way to look at it, but I thought there's more agreement than disagreement amongst you, and so I thought I would just give that feedback to you.
Thank you very much, and do you mind handing that up to us, please?
What?
Do you mind handing that over to Kevin, please? Thank you. All right, next up we have Sujata from West Valley Community Services.
Thank you so much. My name is Sujata Venkatraman. I'm from West Valley Community Services. I'm the Associate Executive Director. We were a first-time applicant, and we had requested funding for the food pantry overhang, and we thank you for your consideration. You know, it is always very difficult to stand here and compete with our partners, and a lot of us are friends and we work together, but we hope you will consider our application. And the food pantry serves Cupertino residents, especially low income and high risk, and so we hope that you will support this project that will help us to make the food pantry more efficient. On another note, similar to what Commissioner Wilson was saying, I also came here and I've attended this, did the grant, then attended the first meeting, and this is the third meeting. Felt the same confusion about what is the funding pot. I mean, we all are investing time. We are like 24 of us applied for this application. You have invested a lot of time, the staff has. So maybe for next year, if there's some more guidelines of what does the pot look like, a range, how much is awarded, helps applicants and saves a lot of time, and then we can actually go through this process without a lot of confusion. We've applied to City of Cupertino, and we are thankful that we've been awarded grants, and it always is very clear in those situations what is the pot and how much have they given in the past. So then as an applicant, I can make those decisions and come here more prepared and not have this lingering confusion. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin, do we have any other blue cards remaining? Excellent. Well, thank you all very, very much for coming and speaking on behalf of the programs that you are representing. It's incredibly helpful to us, and we will now get started on the hardest part of, in my opinion, this evening. I did want to ask a question before we actually dive into the order of things. It was my understanding that we could give a list or recommendation of funds to allocate, but not necessarily at the amount that these organizations are requesting. Correct?
There are no rules.
Correct. Yes. So you can make a recommendation for any amount for any organization.
Okay, so what I'd actually like to hear from the commissioners is overarching, if you had a theory or a rationale behind, good, I'm almost done talking. Behind, if you had any, general thoughts before we jumped in, and or you wanted to discuss, how or why you ranked something the way that you ranked it. Not as specific, but in general.
Okay, so I'd like to start by saying, like Sujata said in my previous thing, is it would be helpful to the organizations and to us if maybe there was a max or something that they could say, the city will go no more than $7,000 or $10,000 or whatever, because it did range all over. Somebody wanted 20 and somebody wanted 2. I don't know what percent that is. We did get percent of the budget, but anyway, it ranked all over the place. So I'm going to strongly recommend, I hope you guys agree with me, that we don't start messing with people's grant numbers. Only because whatever they ask for their grant. So I think it would be very messy if we said, oh, we want to give only half to one organization, 3/4 to another, 6,000 for this, even though they asked for 15. Since this is what was given to us, I'm going to recommend, instead of being here all night playing with numbers, that we look at the grants as proposed and give a grant. And in the future, make it clearer, maybe. Obviously, the goal would be to give as many grants as we can give. As I said, there's no bad grants. And we have, I guess, a reasonable number, $90,000, $80,000, $70,000 that we think the city might give, so we can't give all the grants. We've already done a lot of the work. I guess I'm pleading that we don't stay here all night discussing details of every grant, because I think we've already done that. I've read every grant, every line. I think we all have. So anyway, I'd like that as an overall overriding request of us.
Yeah, I think I'm in line with the Commissioner Wilson. So when I personally did the ranking, the scoring, this is based on the ranking system, which says how many residents it allows for the funding requested. So a lot of rankings are based on that. So if we really start changing the amount we allow them to do it, that invalidates the original calculation on the basis on which we really did it. Yeah, so that's the one. And I think in general, I do echo a couple of feelings from the community, in which I battled too, because I just want to share it right away before we dive into it, right? So the first time, personally, I'm using it with the ranking, and the ranking system is first time introduced, if I remember right. This is the first time we introduced it. And it has a very good start, but it also leads to a lot of confusion in some areas. Out of 20, how much you allocate to each one based on what criteria. So I kind of personally followed a specific guideline across the board. So I didn't put it, I put a common scale and said, this is what, if it is not meeting, I'm putting 25%, 50%, 75%. That's a kind of allocation. But I think maybe more guidelines would help. But I am not saying complaining it, but it's a good start. As one of the audience, another community member said, that it really helped us. We are in kind of an agreement in majority of the areas. So I don't see that as a problem. One thing I would like to see going forward, which I also felt it, is that we need to be able to allow the new organizations or the new communities which is coming there with the hope that they will get kind of a bootstrapped with some funding. While I appreciate we are giving it to the well-organized organizations repeatedly, but I think we may have to cap it going forward with the overall amount, how much is going to specific to those return organizations, like kind of 80-20. 20% of the fund will be going to the returning organization, 80% should go to the new one. Thereby you enable more and more of the organization to coming. Otherwise they know for sure that I'm not going to get in, right? And the last one I just want to make it is that I personally felt, okay, some people are requesting $750 or $1,000 and stuff, and they are not being in the list. Sometimes I feel bad that because when I read it through it, even that gives like so many students gets permitted. For example, that one of those, I don't want to go that each one. But there are some low amounts. We need to come with a criteria that if it is less than $1,000 or some amount in future, we should be able to encourage them. And I don't want them to compete with these ranking, because it is too much to put them on the spot on ranking when some organization does 20,000, 25,000 when somebody is asking 700 or less than 1,000. Mm-hmm. That would help them. Otherwise, it's not that I'm not saying that we are wasting time on it, but I think we are scrutinizing with too much microscope on that particular activity, which they are like budding. They need a seeding money to involve. So those are my comments. That's my general comments. I'll stop there. And
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and I agree that in the recommendation list, if the organization already put an amount in their application package, we just keep the number because in the form, in the evaluation form, there's a reasonable cost that's for the score is 10. So that means if they ask a lower amount, usually I may add some more score to that application. So this factor is already considered. So if after the council get the recommendation list and they change the amount, that score maybe, yeah, it's not useful. Yeah, yes.
Great. So it's actually interesting that you pointed that out. Mine was actually the inverse of it, which was the next item, talking about how much they had gone to other organizations to supplement whatever cost it was. And that's actually something in the future would be great to see on this Excel, is not only the cost of the program, but what that is like in relation to the total cost of the programming. I remember seeing that on the individual Excels, and that actually was a big influence for me in how I ranked organizations if they did try to get community funding or they were trying to get partnerships and things like that. I want to know, if it's a, $2,500 grant, but their budget is $60,000. A $25,000 grant is not that big of a deal for us. It's not that big of a percentage where we should be contributing even just a little bit when they're working so hard to get so much other money. So I think that was the biggest thing. Now, I did want to thank one of the speakers, Carol, for her data and number crunching on this document as well. And seeing that, this is the same thing, seeing as the top 10 actually match up. That's actually pretty great. That's a happy scenario for us. However, I do, and the reason that I wanted to be a little bit more flexible on one or two of the costs for these organizations is because I think that we have designated the Cupertino Historical Society as our historical partner. I forget what the official, Jeff, what is our official title now? Like, they're the Cupertino Historical Partner. We voted on this. What is I can ask direct a question to the audience for clarification. What is our exact new, you guys are the Cupertino's official historical society partner? Archive partner, okay. Archivist. And we did vote on that. That is something that we as a commission selected and chose. So it seems very odd for us to designate an organization as a formal partner of ours, and then not give them any money. And that then there doesn't seem to be a point in having any partners going forward if we're literally not putting our money where our mouth is. I would ideally like for that partnership to be something that's in, a city line item now that it's official. Like Sister Cities is. And I know that, unfortunately, given the way things are shaking out, it doesn't look like that's going to be possible for 2019, 2020. But if there's a way that in the future we can push to have it treated like a Sister Cities program instead of even coming through this grant process, I would like to see that. But given that this is what we have on the table right now, I think that's my number, personally, outside of the top 10, which ranked pretty much for everybody. That's the one that I would want to just push a little bit more for.
Yeah, I have a comment on that. So I had the same question when I was analyzing it, even though the score for me is based on the exact thing which I used, a scale used for everyone. I was wondering if it is such a critical one, and why not even city is pitching in to do as part of an extension of the city, or the park and recreation maybe one, but I think it should be part of the extension of the city, and city should fund or whatever. I just learned about this partner program, and I think that would be the easy way, because if that's continued one, I think they're competing it with the rest of the organization. They're coming for the first time, So it's going to be very difficult for us to really put that a partner in the perspective of somebody coming as a new. It's very difficult. It's not the scale we wanted to. And that's where it puts us in a really hot spot and say, how do I do it? And when I go with a common scale, some organizations, they say they benefit like 5,000 or 6,000 or whatever, then look at the cost spent per. We just looked at the similar calculations, thanks to Kevin and others, so just putting exactly the numbers on. So I looked at how it is, what's the outreach, what's the cost spent on per outreach. When I looked at all of those data in the application, a lot of things, that's why it came up on the top. And if there are if there are partner programs, and if this particular organization is holding the Cupertino's values and the past history, city should take more activity than just pushing these organizations come to the general community fund and asking for it, because we need to have an extended, I would like to see this organization an extended organization of the city, because they are not doing it for some other city, they're for Cupertino city, and the Cupertino city wants to show it, and city should take care of it, and they should, whatever it is, and I think I heard that the rent for the archives and stuff, I would say, why not city can help on it? It's because they're not storing something else, it's city's archive, and if somebody comes back from some other places and just go to the city office, and city staff asking that, I wanted to know, where do I see all those history of it? I'm sure that they would like to show somewhere. And I'm sure that they will just point to this society now, the organization. But, oh, by the way, I'm not going to fund it. Oh, that's somebody else outside. No, that's Cupertino, right? So I had this debate one night, but I know that we never had a chance to really come back and do detailed analysis of the application. We never had an opportunity. That's why where it is today, based on the data. So I would second, kind of support what Chair said, is that this has to be taken very seriously. If it is city, it's a city property, city things, how city can jump in to help, rather than putting them on a spot and come and ask for competing with others. They don't have to. They should be on this side, on the city, right? That's how I see it.
So Jeff, if you don't mind kind of giving us a little bit of the background, just because I know that the fiscal year planning has started for 1920, and this just passed, I believe, in January. It was our January meeting, I think.
Good evening. Jeff Melkus, Director, Recreation Community Services. First time I'm speaking tonight. From what I can hear, what I hear you saying, and I'd just like to confirm it as kind of staff suggestion or staff direction, is that you would like to see us move forward with some way to memorialize that relationship between the Historical Society and the city. And you enthusiastically showed support at one of the last previous meetings to do something in terms of that area. In the budget process that we're already working on, it doesn't mean that because we do not have line items set up, it does not mean that we could not still go forward. You know, there are budget realignment opportunities throughout the year. What's important is that we take your recommendation to council, some form of a more formal resolution to say, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to memorialize it, and then council can then choose to take the recommendation or not.
But we do have precedent. But we do have precedent because the sister cities are precedent. It's the same type of thing. It's a city or a city-funded organization. It's got its own line items. The city has decided its sister cities are a treasure in their city, just like the Historical Society is a treasure in their city. As Gopal said, it's part of the city structure. So I would like to recommend that we pull it out of this whole process and strongly recommend that it becomes a line item just like sister cities. They have done it before with other organizations, that this be one of them for them to consider. And then also to create an amount like we do with sister cities that they can rely on their budgets, because it's a big part of their budget. Sister city relies on, we each get $5,000, we all know it, we work around it, we get it each year, so it's something we can we can rely on, and we plan around it. And it's unfair year after year to say, oh, we're going to give you nothing, we're going to give you 10, we're going to give you 12. You know, they create a service for the city that they should be able to rely on an amount. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
Okay.
Sorry, I have one more point just to add on the comment. So this is in line with the earlier comment I made it on, like, we need to put a cap. I said 20-80, 20% for, that's a suggestion, right? 20% for the returning. That means it's going to be very difficult for the returning organization, and I don't want Historic Society organization, specifically after they talked about the relationship and stuff, it's not like a one-time. Many of them are one-time and stuff. This is like a preserving these things forever, and the more year goes by, the cost of preserving it still goes up. It's not that simple. So coming into it will also be disadvantage in assuming that we put a cap. Then this is going to be a disadvantage for these organizations to come and to present and ask for it.
Did you have any?
Actually, when I look at the application package, I saw there are 3 applicants. They asking for amount more than 20,000. I have to say, because it's my first time, I'm pretty conservative. So when I see that application, I'll be very cautious, because just as another speaker said, our city is growing, so there are always some new strengths, new people coming in. We should encourage those small groups when they're really hard to start their organization. We should give them more help. So if we grant a large amount to one organization, I just feel sorry for those small groups, like we just squeeze them out. And I have to say, in the 3 applicants, why I gave higher score to the West Valley Community Services, because they looks like this is an urgent issue. They in great need of this money to fix the cover. Otherwise, in rainy day, you see it rains a lot this year, and they cannot serve food. So that's why it's different from other 2 applications. That's why I give them higher score. Yeah, just.
Thank you very much. I did want to add, we were talking about making sure that there's money for organizations that are returning as well as new organizations. Even just earmarking, say, 25% is going to go towards new organizations, or maybe doing the grant process in tiers. So we set aside, 2 large ticket, we're going to give 2 $15,000 grants. We're going to give 10 $10,000 grant. I mean, not $10,000 grants, but you get the idea that way when the grantee is putting in their application, they know what pool they're going into and what they're kind of competing against when they can actually apply into a band. I think that'll be a good way to kind of wrap our heads around it as well. Tiered funding, and then earmark a certain percentage so that everybody at different levels will get access to the funds. Now we kind of have to come down to a decision-making point. It seems like outside of myself, nobody else wants to break apart the financial numbers to spread the pot a little bit more. So would we all be comfortable with going with the top 10 as they have come out, both with the raw score and rank order, with the caveat that the Cupertino Historical Society should be treated as a sister cities style, and I'm using that as the comparison program with council. Does that sound like something we can agree on? And before I release that out to the rest of the commissioners, Director, I wanted to know, is it going to, because this is my only hesitation, is that where we are in the process, I know you said we can add a line item, but that's also going to take time. Is there something that's going to make it impossible for the Historical Society to do what they need to do while we're figuring out the city, establishing it as a city line item? Or do you think that that's something that we can accomplish in the time frame? So my only concern is making sure that they can still do what they need to do while we're creating this other budget section for them.
Well, of course, council has the option at any time to pass resolutions that would fund certain things that they desire. There are budget processes and the like, so it's hard for me to say. One thing you could do, again, just as an option, I think would be to recommend funding for the society, but on an ongoing basis versus one time. Because these grants are one time. Yeah, with that strong recommendation, it would flow through, in a sense, both processes. We could start with, start that way and see how council would go. I certainly will take on responsibility through my department to take something forward to the city manager and then ultimately to council so that they can help make that choice.
Excellent.
So I think that was the goal, is to create an amount that is ongoing so they can rely on it, and it's not voted on each year, again, like sister cities, and that it's outside the one-year process. And I don't know whose budget would come out of the city, should be out of the city budget, but I would. So let me just say that, so we got this set of rules. We've all spent time creating this with the set of rules we have, which we've all, I think, agreed were not great. So let me recommend that we vote on the set of rules we have been given, and we've all come up with good suggestions, starting with the Historical Society being a city-funded organization yearly, and then a set of recommendations I've heard from each of us that say, we've been given this process this year, and I don't want to go back and have to rework it, rethink it. We all spend time on it, and it also comes, pretty much amazingly, the top 10 seem to fall out, but that we, along with this recommendation to whatever budget we tell them, we set a set of criteria we think should be set for us, which includes, I loved Anisha's idea of maybe a tiered thing with a dedicated percent going to, to new ones, and it's very unwieldy to look at a $2,000 and a $20,000 grant, new and old. They're not really even the same category, so this was really not a great process. So with a recommendation to improve the process so we can do this more responsibly next year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll just second the same. I think since the process is already did and we did what we did, and then it's time to go to the council. So revisiting even just for one organization, and that means we need to redo all of them because the way in which we did it. So I think we will go with what my recommendations also go with the top 10, what we have. At the same time, I know we talked about the Cupertino Historical Society funding as fixing a specific funding, but I would go a little differently. I'll approach this a little differently. It may not be just funding. There may be some other assistance required. I do not know what that is. But when I look at the application, that it needs a lot of work in many areas. So city might end up in having more other supportive things than just funding alone. So if you just restrict with the funding alone, I think it stops. And then if the demand grows and stuff, then they'll be still stuck. When you really become an extended arm of the city, I think there are many other ways to support, not just the funding alone. So I would like this to be really considered. And my recommendation would be to consider not just funding alone, but also to think about it. If it is responsibility of the Cupertino city to maintain these history and their archive, what would they do? And there is a group of people are there to help and support it on behalf of city, what a city would do. It's an extended arm. So if that is the case, how do they approach this? That would go beyond the funding, because that way I will look at it. If I'm sitting there in the city, as a city staff, I'll look at, okay, somebody is maintaining those archives and doing all those, spreading these great things with the schools and kids, and especially I loved the, did we have a fun without the iPhone? I think we had much more than what it is today, because we don't even look at each other at home. So I really like those kind of things, bringing people to do something. So that means city should really invest more on how to extend support, not just monetary alone. That would be my recommendation. And just to close the thoughts with, I think we did what it is, so I would like to go with the top 10, what we already decided. I don't want to revisit at this point, which means it's a lot of kind of worms, and we need to open up and do it. So that would be my recommendation.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So, by the way, that was, I believe, the raw score order of the top 10, just for clarification.
Up to almost $90,000, right? The top
Yes.
10. So I think Minna brought up a good point. So, why not go for $90,000? They've creeped it up before, so maybe they'll fund all of them. That would be a great resolution. And then I guess Gopal made a point that they could, then do rank order, and if it's not $90,000, they can make that decision to, I think Minna said, gives them an opportunity then to have a say in the bottom 2 or 3.
I think I would just add to it. I think we should push it, and then you can take a recommendation from us. We should fund those 90. If it is 75K last year, that was only 5 applicants or 6. Now it's 24. The attention is increasing, and the cost of inflation and all of them comes up. That means we need to start funding more. So I don't want to go, again, reduce and say chop off for 75 days. It should go beyond.
And we're doubling, going from 5 to 10
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. So do you need an official vote, or can we just, is the recommendation to just give you?
It's probably better to do an official vote and with an official motion and everything.
Okay. The last recommendation I have in terms of process is that we have our score section. I think we should add a separate item for % of funding, because I actually reviewed this, because when we talked about it, it wasn't just fund at the full cost. It was, we can also talk about how much we're funding them. And so my scores are very much based off of the idea that we could, the dollar signs are variable for each of these organizations. I wouldn't have necessarily ranked them the same had I known that we would have to do a lump sum. So that was just for me personally. So my scores, I don't think, no longer necessarily exactly reflect what's been going on here, but what we can do is have our scores to rank them, and then have a separate either 25, 50, 75%, 100% funding amount. So something might be, yes, we're definitely funding it, but all of us thought it should be funded at 75% of their ask rather than at 100% of their ask, and that'll give us enough wiggle room going down that we can push funds to more organizations.
Okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree. Okay, so I think they asked for funding to do a project or an event or something that costs that amount of money. Some of them are ongoing, like all year. Some of them are an event. Some of them are, you don't want to give them a half a roof. I think a better way of doing it is creating maybe a maximum amount or a set of amounts, like one of you said before, 2 at 20, 2 at 10, some whatever. So those that need, that they're giving them $6,000 doesn't help a $12,000 problem. So, however, if in upfront they knew that they were asking for something, and we knew that we were allowed to give certain ranking orders, and maybe also an area or % that is delegated just to new ideas, never funded ideas, that would, I think when we mess with, we're going to give 1,000 extra, 10,000 less, I think that's, and up here in this environment, that would go on forever, and then would like re-rank everything we did. Maybe in our homes we could do that, but I don't know, I spend a lot of time with the information given me. So I think letting them know up front and us know up front what their amount is, and they ask for their amount, that might be a better way than literally going through 24 and changing all the amounts.
Yeah, I do support the way, because I do see that confusion coming up based on if you go on a percentage. I did take those things into account when I was scoring, is that somebody is starting as a bootstrap, they don't know how to go, and they're just looking at city. I said, okay, I think city has to jumpstart them. So I haven't taken that into a different consideration, because it's a city is bootstrapping them. Because that's the only thing they look at it and say, I don't know where to go, just looking for city, and I'm trying to help, even though they don't have any other funding, even 100%. I said, yeah, that's great, because they're going to serve more. I think, yeah, it will, I understand the chair's thing, but I think it will create more confusion, and it will invalidate at least my scores again on what it is, what the way in which I consider it.
Something we know.
We know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speak into your mic.
We have to we have to make scores on something we know as opposed to something we don't know, which would make all scores invalid once the discussion starts and everything changes. So I think knowing up front and then evaluating. So let me just suggest that we make a motion to
Yeah, these are just
fund.
recommendations.
Yeah, so fund what we're
that
going
are
to
not-
fund to the
this
city.
is for process.
And then for process, because if this comes to us again and the next council wants us to do it, we did spend some time on the criteria before. We should spend some time
Doing a
on,
debrief.
yes, exactly, figuring out, now that we've seen the process, what would be helpful to make it a more fair process.
Excellent idea. So why don't we go ahead and I'm looking for a motion to recommend that the city council fund the top 10 applications as listed on our sheet.
I recommend that the Parks and Recs recommend to the city council that make a motion that we recommend the top 10 for granting purposes, with the caveat that the Historical Society be taken out of this process, and request that the city grants them a line item. Is that clear enough?
Yes. Looking for a second on that motion.
I second that.
Great. Do we have any amendment and or discussion to that motion? Great. We can move to a vote. Abstain. Excellent. And with that, the motion unanimously passes. Congratulations to the Friends of Deer Hollow Farm, the Rotary for the Cupertino Fall Festival, UFRAT Museum of Art, the Bay Area Chrysanthemum Show, the Cupertino Symphonic Band for equipment, the Santa Clara Audubon Society for Wildlife and Harvest Day, Cupertino Dianza Lions Charities for Ride for Diabetes, Heart of the Valley, Reaching Hearts, West Valley Community Services for the Pantry Overhang, and Breathe California for their Seniors Breathe program. And yes, but for the purposes of the actual funding right now, it's those top 10. And then we're making our hopefully we'll be recommending to, not hopefully, we are recommending to the city council that you be considered as a line item in our budget process, so it'll remove you guys from this process entirely going forward. Excellent. We do have a robust list. Please don't leave yet. We do have a robust list of recommendations from us, but we know that this process was new because it was, believe it or not, even tougher in the past and even more challenging in the past, and this is a step up. So if you have any feedback, please do let us know, and let us know what worked for you on the application, what didn't work for you on the application, so that next year when this process starts again, we'll be able to make those changes. So thank you all very, very much for coming out, and we're excited to be able to work with all of you going forward. So thank you so much. Excellent.
And just a reminder at the end of this process that either Kevin or someone make a note for January, or whenever we know when this process is going to start again, that we get time at a meeting to fine tune this process. And we'll note our thoughts.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, why don't we go ahead and move to item number 3, which is the...
Should we get Helene in here?
Oh, yes.
Helene, are you out there?
Sorry. Oh, I took Helene's. Thank you. 4, item number 4. We already just did 3. We're not going to go through that again.
Tomorrow. Tell her that's tomorrow. No, I cleared out the audience.
We are going to go on a... Never mind. She's walking in. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is the review of future agenda items and additions prioritization for the Parks and Recreations Commission. Sorry, Helene, I accidentally stole your packet. So as a reminder for the commissioners, what this item is for is to review our draft work plan, what we have coming up for the next meeting, and what we plan, if anything, to add to and or take away from this list. Tentatively, as a reminder for everybody, not guaranteed yet. We'll find out Wednesday next week. April 16th is when our work plan info, April 16th is when the master plan will go to City Council tentatively. And the shuttle survey also on the 16th. So that is a hefty meeting for the commission. So we have a May meeting coming up. That May meeting has the pest management program presentation, the sports center upgrades presentation, the strategic plan priorities theme, and the neighborhood events schedule brief. I would like to incorporate into the neighborhood events schedule brief, Jeff, is an opportunity for us to actually go through and just select a couple of those that each of us will like to go to, so that we can just formalize that and make sure at least somebody is there for each of those events, or as many as we can, because there's going to be so many. We might not all be able to go to all of them. So I would like to add that to the list is scheduling, so everybody please do bring your calendars. Are there other things that folks would like to add or look at in the future?
Yeah, so I have a generic comment on the work plan.
Go for
Can
it.
I ask for it? So I'm sure that I heard in the mayor's meeting that the work plan will be approved by the city council in the upcoming meetings. I don't know when, but my question is that I already asked the acting city manager about, okay, we are going through it and we are given some inputs, and what does that mean, approval? I mean, will they take off something, or will they really say that don't do it or do it? And I'm not getting a clear on it. So I think we can go through these, but I wanted to know what that approval means. So I'm really confused on it. We can go through it, but I have no idea. I'm like walking on a water and see, I have no clue where things will make it.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, that is for the next fiscal year.
Exactly. Our interim city manager, Tim Borden, came and he gave us some guidance. I think we were in the library building that night. And I think the point he made was that this year is somewhat of a transitionary year, and that what we'll need to be doing is working on that plan probably November, December for the following year. And that's the plan that'll go forward to City Council. The unknown is that on the work plan that was just adopted earlier in the week is an item to help define that. And so Council hasn't actually taken action yet.
They don't know either.
Yeah, well, they just haven't taken action yet. We've done a considerable amount of work, including coming to each commission, trying and speaking to each one about how should the workflow go. And so I would think, again, for this year, I would think that the plan and the agendas that you're working through would be at your discretion. I don't see that there will be a process or approval or not. The following year, they're very likely or could be, but we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Okay, thank you. So one more question. For the next one, the May, I would like to see a line item. If it is part of the strategic plan priorities, it's okay. If not, we said that collaborating with the community commissions, because it came up again in the mayor's meeting when I attended yesterday. People are interested, and I would like to see something to kick off on it. And if it falls into that one, it's okay. If not, I would like to add at least what are the means we want to collaborate on what items. At least on a high level, I would like to bring it up one. Because many other commission representatives are asking, and they were excited too. So I don't want to put off that excitement, rather I would like to kindle it more, saying that, hey, we have it, they can come and even they can present, we can request them, right? Mm-hmm. So it'll be good to have it. And then once we have the line item, we can share it with those other commissions in advance. So they can come back and say, hey, I would love to collaborate with you on this kind of. Because it looks like there are a lot of interest. I would like to tap it quickly.
There's definitely interest. We can put a potential agenda item for May of being opportunities for collaboration with other commissions.
Absolutely.
And the last thing is dog park. I'm going to be a bit bullish about it now. I know that the city council is gung-ho about it. How do we make it happen? What do we need to do to make it happen?
Well, again, on Tuesday, the work plan for next year that council just approved, they adopted it, calls for us to take a comprehensive look at our athletic facilities and our sports facilities and the spaces in the parks. That includes the trial of the dog off-leash area at Jollyman Park. There's a little work to go into it. Given that the work plan goes July to June, we've already made the determination, because we can do it internally in a sense, to start that work. We needed to wait until the 2nd of April with council approval, and now that today is the 4th, we are ready to go on getting that trial up and running. As I'll give you in my comments in a few minutes, we've made some conversion on positions, and we're actually recruiting. It's open right now on an internal recruitment for a management analyst. And once we get that position hired, and we expect that to be in not too long into the future, within the next month, that one of the first things that individual is going to be doing is tackling the community outreach and the process and where do the signs go, and working with the community group on the off-leash area.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff.
I have a comment on that, if you don't mind, Chair. So we said that in the last meeting minutes, it says dog off-leash park, and we recommended that doing it quickly and then evaluate. So is there, just in the minutes, but is there any action for the staff or you, Jeff, to go and put this off? I don't know whether council knows that this is what we're recommending it, like to accelerate this program. I know you said it's next year plan, but do they know that we are recommending to accelerate and bring it?
Yeah, we've already
confirmed.
They confirmed that it is?
Yeah, and they
Okay.
confirmed it on the 2nd.
Yeah,
so
well,
that is okay. Okay.
And I've confirmed it with our city manager that we're moving as quickly as we possibly can. The challenge is that we don't want to initiate the trial in sometime like October, because it won't give us meaningful information.
Okay.
We need the trial to take place in the summer, and we certainly don't want to wait until the summer of 20. So the trial needs to happen June or July.
That's exactly. I was thinking
starting.
like maybe in 2 months. I would like to go there. But
Thank you. Absolutely,
That's
absolutely. I think we're on the same. I think we're on the same wavelength on that.
Thank you.
Excellent. So go ahead.
I have a question about the last meeting menu. It is said the joint use agreement with CUSD, they may have a presentation in next couple of months. I haven't seen it scheduled. Just wondering when could it be ready? Oh,
She was asking about the CUSD joint use, correct?
Yes, yeah, because in previous meeting, we are asking how to joint use the facilities, the basketball court and other things. And in that meeting, Jeff said we already have some agreement about joint use. There may be some presentation. So just wondering.
Yeah, it says that it is possibly in May. That's what the minute says. So
Yeah, this is an item to be scheduled, and it's really at your convenience. We have the agreement, we have staff. In fact, we just coincidentally met with the superintendent last week about the particular agreement. So we certainly can do two things. We can put it on the schedule at your convenience when you'd like. We can also make sure that you get a copy in advance, of course, of that agreement.
Let's go ahead and drop it on the May meeting.
June. There's nothing wrong with June. Is it
Question.
important to have it sooner than later? It's done.
It's done. It's just a presentation, right? It's just short.
The next time we need to negotiate it, I think, is 2035.
She's asking for a presentation, I think, right, Min?
Yeah.
You're asking for a.
So June.
So June might be.
It says presentation possibly in May.
Yeah. Well, we have four.
June, okay?
Yeah,
we
because
have a lot of stuff in May.
looking at the.
Yeah, I see that.
to you guys.
In June, we only have one item. Yeah.
Okay. There'll be more. Great. Then we'll do it in June.
Okay. I'll check in with the staff first thing tomorrow morning. I want to make sure that the staff that are implementing it are available. And then
Excellent. All right. Seeing as that is it for our agenda item number 4, let's go ahead and move on to director reports.
Okay. Well, since we were speaking a little bit about the schedule, and you'll notice the pest management item that we've started to coordinate with our friends at Public Works. This was brought to you by a community member. Well, on that same evening, there was also a request to extend some of the space by the community gardens for alpacas. And I think that's a really interesting idea. We are needing to look, once the community gardens design and that project is approved, if it's approved, and I hope it will be, but that's a council decision. At that point, we'll go back to the contractor and see what is, or the design, we'll go back into the design process a little bit and just see if it's possible to tweak it to allow them some space. I think, unfortunately, where we're heading is for the 4-H to repurpose some of the space that they have. But I think that we need to keep an open mind through our community gardens process. And ultimately, we have to weigh whether or not it would be worth it to lose a garden plot or two, knowing that we've had 100-some people on the waiting list for a long time. While we're talking about gardens, the gardens have been what we call deconstructed. There were many safety issues and all. So we are looking at our work plan for next year, again, as the council had approved, and the community gardens project is one of those work plan items. So they've definitely, council has shown interest. Okay, I have a number of things, I'll try to be brief, that I'd like to bring you up to speed on. Local special districts, and many of them are parks and recreation districts around the country, and particularly here in Cupertino, we have a special district in the east part of the city, and it's the Rancho Rinconada district. They're overseen through the county by a group called the Local Agency Formation Commission. We call them LAFCO. And LAFCO has a board of folks that include supervisors from the county. I saw Supervisor Wasserman the other day, and I wish I would have taken notes with the names, but there were a number of different folks that are involved in that. The reason I bring this to your attention tonight is that I wanted to make sure that you were aware that the LAFCO, based on the recommendation of 2 of the Rancho Rinconada board members, has committed to doing what they call a special study. And that special study is going to look at what the governance should be of the special district, and with specific questions about whether or not there should be a merger of the district with the city, and whether, and or another option would be that the district could remain a certain level of, their board could remain with a certain level of autonomy, but that it could become a subsidiary, of the city, meaning that the city council would be the board in a sense, but there would still be some form of governance in a sense from their local board. The good news is that the consultant and the cost for the consultant and the study, all that's going to be taking place through LAFCO. Okay. And again, they approved that at their meeting a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. What that means for the city is very little in the near run, but over the next year, we expect to get a report there in February or March, probably March of next year, so it's a year out. But when we get that, then there'll be options in there, and it's at that point that we'll bring something to you and then to council to say, you know, do you want this? Is this interesting to you? We'll have to take time to look at the building and deferred maintenance and debts, and there's a whole host of things that we'd want to look at. But, you know, there's an advantage. We'd have a pool in the east. We heard from 2 community members tonight who are concerned about, what's the efficiency of the operation. I don't want to take a position. I think that it's up to, of course, City Council will, but it's incumbent upon me once we get that report to provide the objective information. But I just didn't want you to get caught, sideways on this and to be aware of it.
Really quick question on that. So is this the Rinconada folks that came and spoke today? She's part of their board. That is different than this commission, than LAFCO, correct?
Right.
Okay,
LAFCO has some authority they actually have the authority to create commissions, and they have opportunities to audit.
Okay.
They're the kind of an oversight
body to that organization, and we're in touch now with that organization as well as LAFCO, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. In
cool.
fact, I attended the last board meeting of Rancho Rinconada intentionally.
And from that meeting, did it seem, I know the question for us when we had heard them, wow, my English today, when we heard them speak at our work plan session, we were afraid that it might only be 2 people from the board and not the whole board. Was the board fully supportive of us doing more programming versus like the one person from the community who said no?
Well, I think I did 2 comments. The first is tonight was the first time I had heard about the suggestion that we partner with them to actually help program their pool. I'm not sure that the whole board is in support of that, and or the executive director. We need to work through those steps. I have had conversations with their executive director about possibly working together in terms of staffing and such, depending on if our training is right. There's a number of issues with that. The second comment I'd make is that there are 5 board positions in that organization. Right now, 4 of them are filled, and there's been a real question about how to fill the 5th one, because the board had an opportunity to fill it. They had a certain time limit, and they weren't able to come to agreement on filling that vacancy, which means then the decision either had to go to the city council or to the board of supervisors, and that's by government code. The concern and the issue is that the properties that the district has have to be wholly within the city of Cupertino. And it turns out that they almost are, except for 2. And coincidentally, those 2 parcels, we invested quite a bit of research time into it, happen to be owned by Santa Clara County on the very east off of Lawrence Expressway for what we know is the Lawrence Mitty property. So it all kind of comes and goes around. So
I have a quick question too. Does this have anything to do with that area used to be in the county, and then is there any correlation with that at all? Do you know?
Absolutely, there is. In fact, LAFCO made that point, that they questioned in their discussion why the city, if it's got a effective Parks and Recreation agency, why we would need a secondary group. Well, the pool was, and the district was formed prior to, that area being annexed into the city. And when we did, we brought in the district as well, or most of it, but not all of it. And so it isn't as though it was done because community members in the East wanted to create their own, district.
I know I started this, but given that we had the Brown Act presentation that talked about how we're not supposed to really talk about things that aren't on the agenda for an extended period of time, and this is, I have a feeling, will be a very contentious conversation regardless of which way it ends up going, we'd probably need to put this as an agenda item for a future meeting.
That's a great idea. I will. Or you will, Kevin will, we will. Okay, let me move on then to my my next things. I've mentioned the work plan a couple of times. I just wanted to give you an idea. These are items that staff will be spending some time on. There's resources attached. The community gardens we spoke about. There's an item called teen engagement. And that teen engagement includes the new YAB board, the youth activity board that helps to plan bubble tea events and other things that our teens appreciate. At the same time, the teen engagement includes our support of internship opportunities, and specifically in public sector organizations. So we're going to be piloting that as well. We also, while we're speaking of the Teen Center, just finished a renovation of the Teen Center, and Public Works did it internally, and it really came out nicely. It has much more of a Silicon Valley feel. We've got something we call an infinity room. We're looking still at some other improvements that might include virtual reality systems and all kinds of things that the young people want. But the place got a good facelift, a makeover with carpeting and paint and a number of other things. So the Lawrence Mitty property purchase is still on, and it went onto the work plan. The all-inclusive playground that we're working more on. Right now, to give you an update, we're looking still now at what's the process to enter into a contract or an agreement with different organizations or fundraising groups and such. So that's in the make. We also have a department marketing plan that's set to go in November. I think we've spoken about it. And of course, the strategic plan that hopefully in May you'll hear, or you should hear in May, the themes we'll bring to you. And of course, our master plan stays on the plan. So overall, we have our hands full in the work plan. In keeping with what I've committed to you over time, is just to give you a quick update on personnel stuff. As I mentioned, we are recruiting for a management analyst. In the past, this particular authorized position was that of a recreation manager, and we flattened the organization back in the fall when we did our our little supervisory reorganization. And so we've chosen to fill that position instead of as a manager, as a management analyst, which is really going to help us a lot in terms of the business operations. We also have finally filled the facility tech position that's been vacant for some time, and we're really thrilled about that. Young man is named Bobby Kaufman. He's been with us as a part-time. We're very excited to have him on as a full-time. Yeah, I think he's going to do really, really well in that position. A couple of other things. Saturday, April 20th, is our annual Big Bunny Fun Run. And that'll be a good time. And of course, the parks are going to start filling up with festivals as we get into the festival season, beginning with the Holy Festival. I think this Saturday, if memory serves me correct. So that's all I have on my notes. And thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and appreciate your kindness when we grill you. All right. Do we have any commissioner reports?
We'll be quick. So I attended the Senior Center Volunteer Appreciation Lunch, of which the seniors who volunteer, I think she said there were like 120 of them, were all in the room being appreciated. It's a pretty amazing organization. It wouldn't work without all the volunteers. Anyway, and I think they were glad that we were there. And it's a very, so Jeff, I know you've been dealing with your foot there, but it's a really well-organized, fun, thoughtful, creative event. So kudos to the staff.
Thank you.
I just want to echo that. We had a lot of fun. There was a new, like an archery booth, and who knew, but Judy is really good at archery, and she did it in high school or college or something like that. And what's his name? He was wearing a kilt. Anyway, so it was wonderful. The three of us went, and we sent you a postcard from our trip. Yes, Jason was wearing a kilt, and we sent you a postcard from our travels. So we hope you enjoyed that. And yes, Bobby Kaufman is wonderful for our other organizations we're involved in. When we're at Quinlan Center, he's incredibly helpful, and he comes at the drop of the hat, and it's just very helpful. So we're really happy to hear he's full-time. And I've already signed up for the Big Bunny Fun Run.
Great.
Yeah, I think when the invitation came in as a first class, And we were treated as really a first-class thing. And I was really amazed by the way in which they organized right from the beginning to the end. And one of the key things is that the kids serving food. I felt a little bit bad that, okay, they're all standing there while we are eating because they were serving all the high school kids and others. That's awesome, the way in which they did it. And it's so polite. It's fantastic to be there in receiving those kudos from them. And the staff did a fabulous job. I think I learned many things I wanted to incorporate in my workplace, how they really put it and make sure that your seatbelts are tight and when you're doing it. It's really like an orchestration of the theme. It was fantastic. So really, really enjoyed. But one thing I learned, because I purposefully didn't sit on the same table as the other commissioners, because I thought, you know what, sitting there might cause a Brown Act violation, because I was I did unintentionally once. I said, no. That's why purposefully they're saying that, okay, I'm here, but I said, I don't know how to say that. I just said on the other one, but it was enjoying. One other thing, I want to quickly update the mayor's meeting. I'm not sure the process, but maybe, I don't want to give all the details today, but typically when I was in Library Commission, whoever attends will write a quick note and send it to the staff, and then they can make it public, so that it'll be easy, so that I don't have to go through all of them. But at least I want to, I would like to just point out a couple of them. One, definitely many of the commissions came in, and Bike Pet, and they said there's a family bike day coming in on April 13th on Earth Day, which is, I think, next Saturday, I believe, and they wanted us to be there. And Mayor also mentioned that due to the mayor fund, he ordered few things like lights or something to be attached with the bikes, which are rechargeable kind of. So it looks like it's a very nice event, so it'll be great. They really wanted us to be. And of course, Diana from Fine Arts were there, and this is about April 27th, 28th, the Cherry Blossom Festival, and what things are. And one of the key things I learned from a housing commission, John, is that they do have a similar community development program grant, and it is called the HSG. And they did allocate the similar one. So what we did, I didn't know that. They have gone through the same criteria, and the funds allocated are much bigger. It's $120K for one, and then $82K for the second, and $30K for something. They only pick up 3 or 4, but they have a lot of fun. But they did follow some good process, he was explaining. So I was just listening in, but it's an opportunity for us to learn, how did they do such a big fun? They go through it, yeah. So it's great. I just learned it. I noted down all of them, but I think it's an opportunity for us to learn that as well. I just give an update about what we have done. And Library Commission update was the wellness program, whatever they had so far, it is really, really hitting the roof in the sense that they couldn't accommodate number of people in this hall. It always hits 90, 100 kind of, so it looks like that's one of the area. The wellness program is really picking up steam on it. So this is all a high level. I have other notes, but I will just make sure that I'll collect it and write it up later. Yep. Thank you.
I attended the City Council meeting on Tuesday, and on that night they discussed the work plan for our council. And I think there's one item may be related to Park Commission. They said this year they are going to set up I cannot find the specific task. Is that they are going to set up the objective standards for the general plan, and including maybe the park plan. So I think, for example, just like what kind of Greenland can be called a park. So if there's a new development, if along the parking lot there's a very long green lawn, could it be called park? Or maybe our city should have some objective standards. Not only the developer thinks that's a park, they just call it a park. So we are wondering maybe this year if there's any opportunity to talk about this topic.
Sure, we certainly can. It would start with an assessment of what's already in the municipal code, because there is quite a bit already that talks to when you can have a fee in lieu of, and when you need to take property and things like that. It's a challenge since we don't have a lot of property available, but that's an absolutely perfect agenda item to really hash out and discuss.
It would be great also if when we did that, we could have maybe a throwback session to things that happened before. I know we had talked about that. One of the things that the commission in a previous iteration did decide on was based off of the municipal code's determination and looking at the citywide maps of all our parks and recreation services, what we did consider to be parks and recreation facilities, and that certain kinds of recreation things might fulfill certain things where others might not. So it might be good when we have that agenda item to include that past conversation that we had on this topic as well.
Okay. And I think as well, our community development folks that actually manage that, manage the process.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's good to get everybody together to have that. Certainly, we've heard from council members and from you that's an important thing that we look at, and those standards are in the there's some standards in the in the municipal code. We just need to make sure that we're still pliable and flexible enough to where we can take advantage of opportunities as they come. But it's a great conversation to have.
Excellent. Did you have any other feedback? Awesome. With that, I end the meeting at 9:55.
They call me Prince like I'm royalty or something. But the places I've lived ain't no palaces. So I don't need grilled salmon or a new scratching post. Just give me a cardboard box and a can of tuna and we're good.